Hey everyone, welcome back to Polygonal Perspective podcast. My name is Serge. I'm here with my co-host Ian.
Hello.
We're back, and we'll just jump straight in to what we've been playing. Whoa there, Serge from the past. Hold your horses for a second. Hey everyone, this is Serge, back from the future. Just here to let you know that we had quite a few technical issues recording this episode, and in fact we lost the first half of the video recording for the Diablo. So I've recorded the new video by myself, and you'll notice that it'll sometimes mismatch to what we're saying. I think when Ian mentions that I'm level 71, but I'm actually level 80 something in the video. Also, there are some of the things I said that were simply not true anymore by the time I recorded the new video. For example, one of the main things is that I mentioned that in the game you can't really do anything to earn platinum points. That's not quite true anymore with season 1. In season 1 you still can get them, but you can only get 666, and that's not even enough to buy a single full set of armor. But generally the video should match the conversation overall, so you should be able to follow it and get the idea about the game. The rest of the episode should be generally fine. There were some issues with the Transformers recording as well, but I think I managed to do some editing magic, and that should be fine, hopefully. That's it from me. By the way, everyone speaks Russian in the future. Funny that. Enjoy the episode. I have Diablo 4 running. That is my game that I've been spending quite a lot of time in.
You're level 71, so...
Right, yes. I am level 71 at the time of this recording. I actually finished the game last time we did an episode, but I wanted to spend a lot more time in post-game, because that's time will be spent playing that part of the game by most players. So I think it was worth me getting to this level and getting to Torment 4. So Ian, how would you rate my character's armor here?
Looks alright, it's a Blizzard game, so I'm kind of surprised at how small the pauldrons are. I think you need more particle effects, and you need a sweet pet.
Yes, do you like this puppy in my backpack?
Oh, wow, that's awesome.
Yeah. It was a promotion that you could participate in. You had to watch streamers play Diablo 4.
Oh, you had to watch streamers? That's horrible.
Yeah. Right. So actually, before we jump in and talk a bit more about this game, I want to show you the shop, which is actually one of the things I don't like about this game. They have a cat shop now. First time in Diablo. Well, I don't know. Actually, I'm not sure about the mobile game. Maybe they probably have it there as well.
The auction house in 3.
Right. I'm not actually counting that, because that got nuked pretty quickly. And that one, even though it has a very similar fundamental problem, that was not the same thing though. This is literally, you have to buy platinum, which you can only buy for real money. You cannot earn platinum in game. Like, there's absolutely no way for you to earn that. And then once you buy that real money, you can buy cosmetics, you can buy add-ons, which I did buy, but it was pretty cheap, and it had like basic stuff. And yeah, platinum. So you can spend you can spend 85 pounds to buy like 11,500. So just as a context, an armor, like a full set of like a pretty cool armor, costs 2.8 thousand platinum. So to get that, I would need to buy this, which is 21 pounds.
Oof.
21 pounds just to get one piece of armor. Now, obviously, Diablo 4 is not the first game or last game that has cash up, but it's just, I guess my question is, did it ever need this, right? This is the fourth game, like, fourth mainline game, and the game's previous games survived without this pretty well. So why did they need this?
You could argue that none of these games need any of these things, but it makes money, right?
But what a lot of arguments for this is that, well, you don't have to engage with this if you don't want to. Well, then fair enough. But look at the type of armor that you can get for this. Now, obviously, you haven't finished this game yet, but I can tell you that these armors you can buy look amazing. Like, they are so far beyond what you can get in the game. Now, of course, it's subjective, right? you may end up liking the ones you can get in game way better than these ones, but it's still something that looks so nice, and there's absolutely no way for you to get this in game. And you get markings, you get weapons and offhand skins. They look really nice. Like this, for example, like with this cape, there's barely any cape armors for necromancers. So I would like to have this. Well, if I want this, I need to pay for £20, £21. Fucking ridiculous. I'm this is the hill I will die on. I think, look, just as a disclosure, our games have cosmetics, right? You can buy, in Sniper Elite 5, for example, you can buy guns, skins, stuff like that. And each game is different. I just felt this in this game, it's so jarring to see this.
Yeah, that's it's a bit of a shame that they have to be so aggressive with this stuff. Blizzard is in a position where they're trying to build back goodwill and trust with fans, and so it's a shame that somebody, I'm sure, very very high up in the chain made a call to do something like this. It's certainly not the most predatory practice. Like, at least it is just a shop and not some kind of, I don't know, terrible scheme that's preying on your psychology. Because there are worse payment systems out there, but
yeah. Well, let's switch to a more positive note about this game. I'll say this, that what really surprised me after finishing this game is that I really enjoyed the story. Actually, I know you will play this game, and I'm looking forward to talking to you about this once you finish it, because especially as a narrative designer, I want to hear what you think about the way they handle storytelling. It's not a secret that Lilith is a big part of this game, and the way they wrote that character and the way your character interacts with her is really interesting. Interesting and sometimes frustrating. There were times where I would scream at the screen because of the way my character would respond to her or the choices my character makes. I wish, in a way, that you would have multiple choices in this game of what to do or how to respond. The game is actually not that linear. At some point, the things you need to do split, and they'll have, let's say, 2 main quests, and you can do them in any order. But at the end of the day, the story still flows in a linear way. And the way they wrote the storyline, and Lilith specifically, is that she ends up presenting really strong arguments for what she's trying to do, and then your character is very set on defeating her and doesn't budge. And events happen in the end. There's other characters joining that discussion, and kind of it's, if nothing else, it definitely makes you think and give a shit about the story ultimately, because that was my personal complaint about Story of 3. Like, I didn't care about anything there. You fight Diablo, you go to the heavens, but nothing was actually important in that game. While this game has a lot more personal stories, there's people die, of course, in any of these games, but in this one, you kind of feel for some of them and kind of care about a lot of the characters you meet. So I think overall, the story is really good and way better than 3 for sure, 100%. They really kind of paid attention to this part of the game this time.
You're not the first person I've heard praise this story, which is great to hear, because I was more than a little disappointed in the Story of 3. I mean, it was just annoying, right? I would just prefer there be almost nothing. So I am looking forward to that aspect. I'm curious, have you only played Necromancer so far, or have you started some other classes?
So we did together play some of the other classes in the beta, right? And since then, I haven't played anything else. I mean, it took me this long just to get to 71 with just Necromancer. There's a point in this game around Torment, around level 50, where it kind of becomes a bit harder, like a lot harder to level up. But then I just kind of jumped to Torment 4 soon, like Torment 3 and then 4. And then the experience kind of continued in a normal way, like a faster rate. And I was able to actually get to level 71 pretty quickly from there. But I still have 29 levels, because level 100 is a cap. And even then, the cap just means that it doesn't mean anything really. You just keep doing the same things. That's why I felt this was a good time to kind of show it off. Essentially, I'm in the final end game, where it's Torment 4. It's the map starts having these special events. It's called Grim Favors, which you have to do, and then you get the actual Grim Favors, and it's like a meter at the bottom. You can see it there. Once that fills up, you can go to the tree the Tree of Whispers, and it'll give you loot. So just one of the ways you can get loot. Another way to do that is actually sometimes on the map, a whole area will turn red, and that means that hell is invading that area. So if you go there, you can fight like special demons and open special chests. Everything you do in this game is at the end of the day is for loot.
Sounds like they've got a lot of stuff to keep that just the end game interesting, just exciting new things happening even in old areas that you can return to with new things to look forward to.
Yeah, it's clear that the design team spent a lot of time thinking about the whole progression of your character, not just the story, but through the torments and you know what kind of things you're gonna be doing after the game finishes and after you switch to a new torment. And it's fun, really. One of the other things you can do, and probably the main thing you will be spending your time on at this high level, is doing these nightmare dungeons. So you get these items called sigils, and then you can use any of them, and it will create a dungeon for you. Well, it's not going to create a dungeon. It will use one of the existing dungeons, and it will modify some of the parameters to make it into a nightmare dungeon. I think it's 100 tiers of them right now, and you can see that you get like 1 beneficial effect and then like 4 negative effects, and some of them are pretty funny or like interesting. Like there'll be one where there'll be like a halo following you, and every like 20 seconds, let's say, there'll be a lightning strike on you, and this halo will create like a bubble for you, and you have to get into that bubble, and if you don't get in the bubble, that lightning strike hits you, and depending on the tier, it might just one-shot you. So you have to make sure that you are in time into getting into that bubble to be safe. So you know, they do some interesting stuff like that with the dungeons, and you can tune these to your class, I guess. If you don't like some of the stuff, you can just ignore it and get enough, because you can actually craft these as well. I am a bone necromancer, and bone is physical damage.
So are you running a melee build as a necromancer?
So physical doesn't mean melee in this case. Physical just means that, well, bone skills are classified as physical damage. That's why it's called physical. They don't have their own kind of thing. It's not shadow, it's not frost, it's not fire, anything. It's physical. So they just had to use that. You cannot be a physical necromancer. You know, I'm not going to be swinging it. My basic attack is still like a spell. I shoot 3 like bone shards.
It was always cool how much build variety there was in Diablo 2, that you could do things like have a sorceress, and if you had the right equipment, you could build your skills around a melee build.
So this game has that and more. Not only do we have skill tree, which is here, that you go through, you will then have a paragon, and paragon is a completely whole different thing. Once you get to level well, I don't even remember, what was it, 50 or something, you open the paragon boards, and you start going through the board, putting paragon points into these nodes, and then they have rare nodes, they have requirements, then they have like glyph slots that you put glyphs you can find in the world. They have bonuses, they have requirements, they activate other nodes around them. Then once you get to the end of one board, you choose a different board, and each board has its own like legendary node. For example, this one is Bone Graft, increases my damage with bone skills, maximum essence, stuff like that. So then you can tailor that. And even just getting to the legendary node, you can go in different ways. Pick up different rare nodes, put glyphs in different glyph slots. So right now I have 3 boards because I'm level 71. By the time you get to 100, you'll have 4 boards, I think. And then you can reset all of this and just choose new points, put different boards, and each board you can rotate the board as well. So it doesn't mean that you have to put it like this. You can just rotate it 90 degrees, for example, and go through a different way through this board. This is like so much possibilities here. Like this will be, you know, studied for years, I think, and build different builds. Now, not only that, you of course have all your, you know, usual equipment stuff. Each item has imprint, right? That's the orange text. Then these imprints can be removed from an item and then put on a different item. And then that also creates your build for you. There's a lot of cool effects here. There's more tiers of items as well. It goes, you know, usual like common, rare, and then it gets to legendary, which is like a normal orange color. Then it gets to sacred, which is these ones here. And then ancestral, that's the highest level, ancestral legendary. And also there's uniques, which is a very unique item that has like it's a specifically named, has like a flavor text and a very specific effect that you cannot remove or change. So this one, for example, is the one that will cast a mini blood novas on your minions. Like you can spec into being a blood necromancer, and one of the skills you can have there is a blood surge, which is like a AoE blood nova thing. And with this unique ancestral, each of your minions will cast a nova like that, which is pretty cool. Actually, speaking of minions, but if you don't sacrifice them, you can choose which type you want. So the melee skeletons, like skirmishers here, which are more offensive than guys with shields, and like reapers. Mages, shadow, cold, bone have different effects, and golem, bone, blood, iron. There's so many things you can do.
So for all that you're showing off here, you know that you've barely scratched the surface.
No, I wouldn't say so. I think I did a lot of things, actually. I think at this point, for me, I got to a point in any Diablo game where I'm, getting items I already got before, but I'm just waiting for better rolls. Here I have so many ancestrals, like trying to decide which chest piece to use. It's like, I got pretty deep into the end game.
So where are you going from here? Are you going to 100? Are you going to start another character?
So I want to get to 100, and then maybe I'll start a new character. I think that's what I'm going to do.
Okay.
So one of the things that I was actually missing, and it's noticeable straight away, is that you don't have followers anymore in this game. Now, They are kind of vague about it. I think people ask them, and what they say is that they're releasing this game without them currently. So I think my guess is that they're going to bring them back, and mostly because, well, first of all, why not? And also, the way you do story and side quests in this game, sometimes, well, actually a lot of times actual NPCs join you and they fight with you. Yeah, so followers is not a thing, and they might be eventually, but we'll see. Another thing I actually you might have noticed, I had a horse, so that's another thing they added, which is a mount. Essentially, you get it pretty late in the story actually, but you do get it, and you can use that to kind of travel faster. Of course, you can use mount armor. You can get saddles for it, get different mounts. They do drop from bosses as well. There are world bosses as well. I think currently there's only 3 of them. I guess they'll add more. In general, I think this game can be sometimes a bit easy, especially when it's like a group content, because the way they handle grouping is a bit unclear, I guess. They don't really force you to group up for a lot of stuff. Like if you show up, for example, there's an event, you can just show up and start doing it with other people, and then it'll count for you as well, which is kind of weird. It gets to a point where I'll be running in the world, and then I hear something like just like in a distance, someone's fighting something, and then I get there, and then everything's over, and there's just loot on the ground, and I just pick it up, even though I haven't done anything. It's like it's a bit weird. Same with bosses and world bosses as well. It's like you can just show up at the very end and just get loot. I guess they don't really care that much. They just want people to do things, and they don't. I think gone are the days where they are very strict about this. I'm just thinking about World of Warcraft, for example. Back in the day, they were really strict, and I guess they still are in a way. But in this game, even though you see people in the town, you see people in the world, they're very relaxed. Like I've never felt the need to kind of like join a party before doing something. So, I think I mentioned it before, there's PvP as well in this game. I did some of it. But again, because of the way this game handles kind of world population and leveling, you end up with like players of any level in the same zone. So it's just based on Torment. If you're in Torment 4, you'll be seeing everyone else in the Torment 4. So if I'm level 71, and I go to the PvP area, I'll end up fighting like maybe level 90, which is, pretty hard.
Have you grouped up with random people to go not just PvP but to quest together?
I grouped up with them to do like events and bosses. But again, even then, like I find it always weird. Like I'll show up to a place and someone will invite me, and I'm like, okay, well, I'll click yes, but there really isn't any benefit to that. So I think one of the other things that kind of stood out to me overall is the dungeons. First of all, I think we talked about this when we were playing the beta. I'm pretty sure they're not randomly generated. And I think back then I kind of theorized that it's fine because there's so many of them, right? you're going to be doing so many other things as well that there's not real reliance on dungeons being the only thing you do, which is turned out to be pretty much what it is. There's so many other things you can do before you have to go to these dungeons that it's not the only way to get loot at all. So I think it makes sense they're not random, but I think there's a bit of a different feel to them for me compared to like 2 or 3, where I remember in the previous Diablos you have this feeling of going really deep into this disturbing looking place, going literally deeper. Like you would go downstairs and you keep going down, and
that's the whole conceit of Diablo 1, right?
oh yeah, like right at some point it's like level 5 and everything's really dark and scary. Here it's more like you don't really get that. Sometimes you get levels, but they're not, a lot of them are not like that. Like this dungeon, for example, like I wouldn't be surprised if this dungeon essentially kind of goes here, maybe turns around here, maybe there's a couple of options here, and then maybe there's a boss here, and that's it. Like I'm not gonna be going down anywhere. The environment is not gonna be changing. This is just gonna be this dungeon. So it's not a major complaint, not at all, but it's something that you kind of start noticing over like many hours playing this game.
So despite the lack of random generation, you don't feel like you're getting bored of the same level layouts or anything like that?
Oh, no. I think there's enough interesting things here. Like I said, you spend quite a lot of time just out there, not in the dungeons. If you log into Diablo 4 and decide, you know what, for the next 2 hours, I'm just going to be traveling the world outside in sandboxes and doing things, that's an absolutely valid way of doing things. And there'll be enough things for you to do and tough enemies to fight. This just became only one of the things you can do. So I'll say this dungeon ended up being pretty easy in terms of like, variables that I got. A lot, quite often these nightmare dungeons can be really pain in the ass. Like you can get, some of the killers for me are cold and nullifying aspects, where nullifying are like an effect on elites where they have a bubble around them that nullifies magic. So my bone spear just bounces off that. So I have to go in the bubble really up close. And of course, cold is frost, so it just freezes you and then you die.
Did you find in 3 that when you played on the highest difficulties that regular mobs would be completely easy and then champion packs would come out of nowhere and just destroy you within seconds?
Oh, yeah.
I felt like the difficulty was nothing, and then it would spike at just small times. Do you feel like 4 has that same kind of combat pacing at the highest levels?
So I think it's still absolutely there. The only like the silver lining of that is that there's other things going on. So sometimes I die to like a very kind of deliberate things, like, oh yeah, like I see it from a mile. Oh, okay, now I'm slowed down. Now I'm I have like frosted. Now this guy is like has nullifying, and I see it coming. I'm gonna die, and yep, there it is. I'm dead. And sometimes there's still those explosions that just kill you, or like suddenly there'll be like one enemy that has like a stealth and a backstab, and then the backstab also is combined with a with an aspect here in Nightmare Dungeon that says, oh, enemies from behind deal like 200% more damage, and then you just don't pay attention to that, and they just like blow you up. So that definitely still happens. If you want to be safe, you have to like pay a lot of attention. You have to be very careful. At the same time, there can definitely be dungeons where you feel like, okay, you are not prepared for this. Everything is like just destroying you. Actually, I'm very this dungeon. Okay, I know. I think I had to kill everyone. Is one of those. Each dungeon will have like a different kind of requirements. They're just generic ones. Like I think this one had kill everyone and then the door will open. Some others, I think we actually showcased that in the beta. Some others will have like you need to find 2 keys and then open the door. By the way, I have 1 point. Okay, actually, I need to use this. Often they will consist of 2 parts. So this was the first part, and now as the second part, and has different requirements. So this one has you need to search some villagers, get a key. Dungeons will also have like random events. They will sometimes have like rooms dedicated to them. So for example, if this dungeon had one, let's say this would have been like a random event. You show up there, and there'll be some adventurers saying to you, "Hey, we got here. We tried to like clear this dungeon, but we failed. Help us." And then you'll have like an event you can do. Cool. I think I'm not gonna do all of it. If you have any more questions, I can show something else off. Otherwise, we can wrap it up here.
I'm sure at some point I'll give the game a go.
Yeah, it's cool. Okay, let me just get out of here before I die. Another thing you can die pretty easily to is the butcher, which they have in this game. But the way he plays is a bit different from the other games. Here, he can appear anywhere in the dungeon. So if you're doing a dungeon, any dungeon, he can just randomly appear. And at the start of the game, like for most people, most classes, he's like almost impossible. He's not technically impossible, but it's really hard to kill him. Like he has a charge, he has his hook, he can slow you down, and he does a lot of damage.
They need to pay out royalties to whoever designed the Butcher in Diablo 1. I mean, yeesh. They've leaned so hard into these. I mean, do you go to Tristram? Because you go to Tristram in 1, 2, and 3, so...
No, this you go to Tristram in a very quick flashbacky way, but
of course,
this is a different continent actually. Tristram, so this continent is here, and then the Tristram is like you have to cross the sea, and it's like over there somewhere. It's a entirely different place. This actually this has Caldium, which is right here
in 3, yeah.
This but this it gets like raised, so it's like full of demons. But yeah, this is Caldium. Yeah, so Butcher around level 50, you can actually take him on more or less, and that's where I killed him once. And then in Nightmare 4 here, I once again cannot for now kill him easily. Like when he shows up, he now has a shield that has like another full health bar, and he's stronger. And when he shows up, I run. I think I can still kill him probably, but I often do only Nightmare dungeons, and Nightmare dungeons means that I have to deal with other modifiers. And when he shows up, it's just another layer of of things coming at me, and I usually just die to him. And if you die to him in a dungeon, he leaves. You have only one chance to kill him, but he will always show up again afterwards. All right, cool. So yeah, I'm enjoying it. I'll keep playing it. You know, this game, I'll just say this: it's a good game. Just like if you want to take one takeaway from my experience, it's a good game. It's a worthy Diablo sequel. It will keep you playing it after the main story. It's worth playing it. It's interesting. There's things to do, and yeah, they nailed it really. The complaints I have are minor at the end of the day. It's a good game.
Nice.
Cool. Right, so Ian, what have you been playing?
The big one is Street Fighter 6. I probably mentioned it last time, but it's something I've been continuing to play. It's been out for a few weeks now. Serge, you've played a bit of it as well. We've played a little bit together. I've got some other friends in Canada that I've been playing with, which has been great because this is the first fighting game that I've latched onto that has really good netcode. This is rollback netcode. I can play with my friends in Canada. I can play with my friends in Brazil. The connection is quite good for the most part. Feels really good, and I'm really enjoying the game. The more time that I spend with it, picking up all these nuances, I am picking up not just one or two characters. I'm playing like 5 or 6 characters at this point, kind of switching between them. That's the way I like to work. I'm sure eventually I'll find my niche, but right now I'm picking up all kinds of little things, like when you throw a sonic boom as Guile, don't just hang back necessarily. You can walk forward, and then Guile has certain attacks that are really safe to perform that actually move him forward while he attacks. So you can throw a sonic boom and then walk behind it as a shield and get ready to throw out some extra attacks for an offensive pressure. So I'm picking up all kinds of little things like that. And I'm also using the parry more. It's really cool. What I admire about it the most is that as someone who played a lot of Street Fighter 3 Third Strike, that game was so hard to play and had such a high skill ceiling. You know, the parries looked so cool. Everybody wants to have an awesome godlike evil moment when you play the game. But after, you know, hundreds of hours of playing that game, I still can't parry very well. It's still something that, like, it's mostly a tool to keep zoning at bay, to keep fireballs away from me, and to play more aggressively. But I can't really do it in the middle of combat. The cool thing about Street Fighter 6 is it's relatively intuitive picking up these mechanics. I mean, it's still a very complicated game, but it is so easy to get to the really cool stuff, and yet you can still feel that the skill ceiling is like infinite. There's so much to learn. What's your experience playing the game so far?
Well, I mean, I keep trying to find time for it. I really enjoy playing fighting games a lot more with my friends, like offline, than picking, like, just firing it up and going online. Like, I've done it before, and I know I need to do it for this one, but I think the whole social aspect and being in the same room or even just on a call is so much more interesting to me. I know what it is. It's not just all like, you know, I miss you talking to my friends. It's not just that. It's, I don't know, it's everything, right? Reactions to friends, like someone did a cool move, and you know. On the other hand, when you're playing online, it's so like, man, the only thing you get is like maybe someone rage quits, right? Then you can tell, like, yeah, they were kind of pissed off.
The human element.
Yeah.
I've kind of been the same up until 6. I have played a little bit of ranked online, but mostly it has been playing with friends. In this case, I'm lucky that for once, I'm not just the only person in my friend group playing this fighting game, but I actually know about like 5 people that are playing the game. So it's not hard to find someone who wants to play. But I kind of felt the same way about Diablo as well. Weirdly enough, when each Diablo game, when I played them for the first time, I would play through the story mode like a single player game, and then I would meet up with a friend who had also bought the game the same day, and then, you know, the whole post game would be hundreds of hours of myself just playing with them, and, you know, we would just chat the whole time, basically, because it's such a great, like, zone out, like a whole zen state of dungeon crawling and relaxing for the most part. You'd chat about whatever, or I'd have music playing in the background, or I'd have YouTube videos on in a second monitor or something like that. It's never something that I'm like fully committing to 100% of my brain power, my attention.
Yeah, but the thing is, right, with the Street Fighter, it's, you can't just put it down then pick it up when your friends are over. It's a game that you need to master, right? Well, I mean, look, you can play it whatever you want, right? Like, you can just be a noob in it, like, and still play it every time. But for me, I just can't get into the state of mind where I play the game, fighting game, for a long time and never like learn how to play it properly. To do that, you can't rely, unless you have friends over all the time, right? Which I don't. So I have to go online and play with other people that way to get better at this game.
Yeah, you need to have people at your skill level.
Yeah, and also what doesn't help me personally is that I'm still struggling to find my character in this game. I think it'll probably be Cammy, probably, but even then, that's because I had to like go with who I don't like the least, essentially. I will be playing in more of it.
Well, Rashid is coming, right? So now you've got another potential name. He was in 5, the Wind guy.
Yeah, I've never played him in 5. It wasn't really my thing. I think if anything, I'll pick up Akuma. I think that's the one I'm going to be checking out.
But he won't be out until the spring.
Oh wait, did they not? Is it going to be like in batches?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think they said spring 2024.
Oh man, that's so far.
Well, aside from Street Fighter, I've been playing Perfect Dark.
Perfect Dark, the original.
Yeah, the original.
Are you looking forward to the remake they're making?
I think it's a reboot, and no, not necessarily.
Oh.
It sounds like it's going through its share of development woes, for one. I played some Perfect Dark multiplayer as a kid. I never really got into the single player, but I have the rare replay disc from my Xbox One, so I was giving it a go and giving it some more time, and it's a good game. I can see why a lot of people like it. Playing it these days, it is interesting how brutal this game can be with general feedback of what you're doing, I hate to say, but sometimes it's not really clear why you're doing what you're doing in the single player or what you need to do to progress the story. Like, as an example, I was playing a mission today where there are 3 objectives the player needs to perform. and you can usually perform objectives up to this point. You can perform the objectives in any order, and you're supposed to meet someone in the basement of this facility. When you go down into the bottom of this facility, there's a voice saying, I'm dressed up as one of the guards, Joanna, so don't shoot me. Say, okay, perfect. So you go through this area and you look around, and I can't find this guy. I wander through and I look for every door, and nope, it all looks clear. I eventually look up a walkthrough. He doesn't show up until you've completed the previous 2 objectives. So I actually had to leave, and I had to go complete objective 1, and that made him magically appear.
Yeah.
With no feedback of whether I was doing this right or wrong. I mean, there was a level where I was trying to flip a switch and I couldn't figure out how to flip it, and it's because I had a hacking tool that the game never taught me how to use, and it didn't tell me when I tried to interact with it that I needed to use the hacking tool or anything like that.
So Perfect Dark, for people that don't know, is not just an FPS. Like, what's the actual hook of this game?
Well, it's an espionage style game. It's from a lot of the same people who made GoldenEye on the N64. And
Right,
this was a bit more of a sci-fi X-Files kind of bend to it. But gameplay-wise, it is similar. It's that kind of action sort of stealth shooter with a pretty involved story this time around. For an N64 game, it's a lot of fun. Technically, it's doing a lot of things that felt pretty astonishing for the year 2000 on that kind of hardware. And as somebody who has played, so many hours of GoldenEye as a kid, and also played so many hours of the Time Splitters series, this feels like the evolutionary missing link between what you might call an evolutionary dead end of the FPS genre. They never really made FPS games like that before or after. So they're pretty interesting to play, just from a control standpoint and design standpoint.
Yeah, I managed to kind of avoid all of these type of FPS games throughout the years. Haven't played GoldenEye or this game either, so I might actually check out the remake they're making.
Reboot, I think, but I think Time Splitters 2 is on the list of games for you to check out, because I think out of all of them, that one is probably the best representation of the formula. I think they're all fantastic games, but Time Splitters 2 is probably the best. But yeah, Perfect Dark, I want to spend some more time with it, but I think it's pretty cool so far. I suppose I was kind of hammering on it a bit there, but there's a lot of creativity with guns that can shoot through walls, or you can mount a gun on a wall that can fire at enemies. Very Ratchet and Clank, I suppose, in that way. So very, very creative. And again, for the time, pushing a lot of technical limits.
Okay, cool. Is that it for you then?
That's it for me.
We'll take a quick break and get on with the news. First piece we have now, just kind of disclaimer about the news. We are going back a couple of weeks maybe or so, because we spend a couple episodes watching the game fests and showcases. So some of the news might be not the freshest, but we thought it was still worth talking about them.
It's been such a busy time for news.
Yeah, we'll catch up pretty much the next episode. So yeah, let's get into this. The first one I have is Nintendo served Valve takedown notice to remove the Dolphin emulator. Now, this happened a few weeks ago. It pretty much is what it sounds like. The Dolphin team wanted to put the emulator Dolphin on Steam, and just before it happened, Steam told them that Nintendo sent a DMCA, and it's not going to be on Steam anymore. Now, look, this is never-ending battle between the game industry and emulation, and specifically Nintendo, who are very hardline about this. I think the interesting part of the story is that it came out that actually Steam was the one that alerted Nintendo to this to begin with, so kind of doing their job for them. I guess I can see how they want to be safe with this, but there's kind of different schools of thought about this. There's the preservation, and there's also the legal side that Nintendo is pushing. Actually, they are saying that the main reason is that the Dolphin needs to use cryptographic keys that they can only obtain illegally, so that is there. argument.
Well, it's a bit of a scary argument, actually, because right now emulation is considered okay because you can do whatever you want with your console. So you can extract your own keys from the console that you own and put that in an emulator, right? But if Nintendo takes that to court, and if they can prove or if they can convince the judges that that is illegal to do that to your own hardware, then overnight emulation could be considered illegal.
Yeah, I think it's just the way you extract those keys and inject them, and the way Dolphin does it. Look, I don't want to turn this into too technical, but
yeah, potentially it's worrying.
Yeah, I think there was also historically a case in US that set a precedent that that it is okay to emulate, and that's still the case. But at the end of the day, this isn't even about court cases or anything. This is just about Steam and Nintendo, right? So Steam can just, and I mean, that's what you expect. They just removed it. It's absolutely not worth it for them to just have it there and potentially end up fighting legal battles with Nintendo. Who could say who could win that? But I can say that, probably this team doesn't want to spend money on it. That's for sure.
Yeah, I think maybe the Dolphin team flew a little too close to the sun with that one, promoting their product.
I'll be honest. When I learned that they are going to be putting Dolphin on Steam, the first thought I had is like, why though? Like, you are baiting Nintendo almost. It's like they're gonna respond to this for sure, and of course they did. Well, Steam told them, but either way, whether or not Steam would have told them, Nintendo would have learned about this sooner or later, and they would have responded. I think I personally am for preservation for sure, because especially Nintendo, there's a lot of games that Nintendo just refuses to put out on their consoles. Historically, their shop ecosystems were very closed, right? They and you couldn't. What was it like? What was it like? If you bought games on the Wii shop, you couldn't play them on Wii U or something like that.
Yeah, because nothing is tied to your account; it's tied to your device.
Yeah, so that was like, look, at the end of the day, it's their IPs, so they can do what they want with them, but they are fighting with that general wish of players to preserve games, right? To have them being playable somewhere, and it gets to a point where you can't even buy them legally anywhere, like a lot of games. So what do? Well, Nintendo says you shouldn't do anything. Some people say they should be preserved and be playable. It's such a gray area that doesn't help that Nintendo is always so hardline on this, to a point of alienating.
Yeah.
Alienating, yes, their own player base.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Yeah, they're often in the news about this, and it's not a good look to them.
I mean, there are companies that are out of business, and we don't know who owns the rights to their games, and so their games aren't going to be on anything probably ever again, at least until they become public domain, and that's if anyone cares to preserve these things. So in the meantime, it's important that people have access to these things.
Okay, I guess that's fair enough. If it was IP of a company that doesn't exist, what can you do? I guess you could just say, hey, government could just take it over and then release it. I don't know. There's things you could do. There's just not enough interest in it, I guess. But yeah, it is what it is. Lord of the Rings Gollum studio, Daedalic, reportedly lays off 25 employees and exits game development. Oh boy, what a shame. I have not played this game myself. I've seen videos and reviews. It's not a good game, for sure. I feel like it's a game that nobody asked. I'm a Lord of the Rings fan. I read the books, watched the movies, and never thought there was any need to have a Gollum, not even origin story, because Gollum's origin story is The Hobbit. That's the origin story. So I don't even know where this takes place, because his origins is in Hobbit and he dies at the end of Lord of the Rings. Spoilers. So this must be like between one of the movies, right? Somewhere there, maybe between Hobbit and the trilogy. I don't know, but it's reportedly it doesn't look amazing. It had performance issues. Even the highest GPUs were struggling with it for some reason, and it just wasn't a good game. And then this backlash and bad reviews kind of pushed Daedalic to just dissolve their development department. Now they are also publishers, and so they will continue, but without all those people. 25 people just lost their jobs, and they've been developing this game since at least 2019. So that's pre-COVID.
It seems like a very ambitious game to be made by 25 people. The studio is known for what, smaller scale adventure games before this?
Yeah, they I think the Deponia is the most famous one. I actually want to try the game.
So, no very, very high pressure on a very small team to deliver a 3D action game for next gen consoles. At the time it was I seem to remember this game being touted as one of the first games that was being developed for the then and announced next gen consoles. That's a lot for a team to take on, and
Yeah,
it's not surprising, I suppose, how it turned out.
I guess that's the question, right? Who's to blame? Is it the actual team that made the game, or the management that put this team together of 25 people and then tell them, hey, make a AAA game with this much people and do it through COVID as well?
I always say the worst thing that a piece of media can be is forgetful or unmemorable. And it is impressive that a game that bad launched, because these days we just don't get games that bad anymore. I feel like there are so many big companies that control games that they don't allow these things to happen. So it's pretty interesting when, I mean, do you remember the last time something like that came out?
Well, I don't know. I do remember. It's called Redfall.
Yeah, I mean, Redfall's not considered very good, but is Redfall like broken like that?
Well, you know what? I feel like the only reason why Redfall didn't end up being dissolved as a studio, or like, is because they're bigger, right? I feel like we'll never be immune to bad games being released. I think that's unrealistic. Like, I don't think anyone should be waiting for that time.
No. I mean, don't read that as that, but
And it's fine. Bad games can be released. I can believe that the 25 people was just not enough for this project. But that's not a fault of any of those people. None of those 25 were at fault because they were probably assembled by somebody else.
I'm sure they worked very hard.
Yeah. So they're paying, but they're the ones paying the price ultimately. So yeah. And man, it's just bad show. Yeah, that was Golem.
On my side, Microsoft internal documents reportedly show that they considered buying, at one point, a lot of companies. Sega, Bungie, Square Enix were all in there. And Rebellion was actually on there. Now, that doesn't mean that Microsoft and Rebellion were necessarily in the talks, but Rebellion was on a list of potential companies that Microsoft could approach for a buyout. Obviously, as an employee, yeah, we don't hear anything about this stuff. It's interesting stuff. It looks like at one point Microsoft said they wanted to spend Sony out of business, which is probably not faring nicely for Microsoft right now, given that it sounds like a very anti-competitive philosophy, and they're being investigated with this Activision acquisition over potentially, being anti-competitive. They're saying that this was a few years ago and this isn't their strategy anymore.
Yeah, if it reads like a Christmas gift list or something like that.
Yeah, we can have them or them.
Yeah. But it's funny how every time there's like a court case or whatever and these documents are revealed, it's always, you read about these Sony and Microsoft just talking shit about each other and saying how amazing they are. And what was it, a couple of years ago, something, there was another, I don't remember, but there was another case of like, this time it was Sony is talking shit about Microsoft. And it was so funny. Like every time it just shows the true faces of these people. Like they just want to one up, screw over each other and just get more money.
Oh yeah, I mean, I've kind of been, I don't know, it's not like I've been trying to defend Sony lately, but I think Microsoft is the greater evil right now because they're the one that's acquiring a massive company and getting bigger and stronger, and monopolies are bad for everyone, right? Except for the people who are acquiring all these assets. It's just scary stuff because I look at Hollywood and the amount of Hollywood movies that come out a year that I think are actually valuable and interesting. And I look at the games industry and I can see the direction that these, I mean, they're not even AAA games anymore, quadruple A games that we're headed in. And it's kind of scary. That these documents also showed somebody didn't use a strong enough highlighter, and we got to see the budgets of The Last of Us Part 2 and Horizon Forbidden West. And both games were over $200 million budgets, which is just nuts. I mean, that is a Hollywood movie budget.
Yeah, to be honest, I'm not surprised about these budgets, especially those games. They're like, if you had to, make a list of the 5 most higher budget games, and you didn't know anything, you'd probably put them there anyway.
And that's before marketing, right? So imagine how many copies they have to sell to make back their money, right? To not go bankrupt as a studio or to damage Sony's stock or things like that, right? The pressure must be immense. And you can imagine the decisions that these companies make in order to hit a target audience, right? I just don't think, I mean, the amount of people, like, for all the size of Rebellion's projects, it's a challenge to communicate a creative vision amongst a whole team, right? I just can't imagine making a game with like 200, 300, some games maybe with like 800 people in different time zones and multiple outsourced studios. And how do you communicate something really interesting? And how do you make something interesting that can sell a minimum of 10 million copies or whatever?
Yeah, I think at those sizes and those risks, creative decisions are being made by a lot less people than, let's say, in our case. In Rebellion, a lot of people have a chance to provide input, feedback, and quite often that ends up being reflected in the game. Changes being made, people being listened to. But once you get to those levels, you have, the creative vision holder and some people below him. But at some point that gets cut off, and then the rest of people are just doing the grunt work. They just know what they need to do and they do it. Depends how you look at it. You could say that kind of limits creativity in a way, which is true, but also at those risks, right? You have to consider that as well. It's a tough situation. I think also Monopoly, speaking of that, of course theoretically it's really bad, but I'm kind of conflicted on that as well, because it's bad when it's kind of done in a certain way where it becomes a monopoly that chokes the competition. But on the other hand, sometimes studios being bought that would be dead if they wouldn't have been bought out. So in those cases, I'm glad they are, because they can continue.
Yep.
Right.
Yep.
So,
but of course now the risks are so much higher. I imagine for, we were talking about Arcane, and if Arcane had released Redfall and were independent, they might have gone out of business from that because they would have lost so much money. But part of that is just the fear of how much money is being swung with every title that launches. It's scary stuff.
As I often think about this, who is the source of that? Is it the players that demand better graphics, better everything?
No, it's the whole business, I think, right? Like, marketing has conditioned people to expect better graphics and more features with every game.
Could it be the employees that want more, to be paid more and more every year and every generation, and that kind of drives? I guess the answer is just probably all of those combined, right? So that kind of drives everything. If you're a Call of Duty fan, for example, how many players of that would not play the next Call of Duty if it looked even just the same, right, or slightly worse? Is there a space in that in that franchise to say, you know what, we're going to spend less money on graphics and more money on, let's say, narrative and design? Why not? Well, I think in certain circles, in that one, for example, a lot of players would probably say no, hell's no, I don't want that. But in other like indie games and maybe lower budget games, maybe that's okay, right?
When investors come in is when it gets scary, because once you've got like bigger partners investing in your company, you have to expand. So many of the biggest companies started out as relatively small ones with smaller groups of people, and then at some point they had to expand from teams of 20 to teams of 40, and then 40 to 80, and this desire to stay cutting edge and make bigger, more successful games each time brings you to where we are today.
Yeah, I'm not gonna sit here and say I don't like big budget games should die. Like, I enjoy them as much as the next person, right? I enjoyed Last of Us 2. It had great visuals, great performances.
Actually, Last of Us 2, you can knock it, but it was very brave what they did with the narrative. Some people hated it, and that's kind of cool for a game of that budget and that size, I gotta say. I didn't care for the story, but that's really cool because they could have done something much, much safer.
Well, fair enough. Yeah, the story, they did take a chance, but I guess my point is that they still had, they still spent that budget on like amazing visuals and performances and everything else. And I'm for it, right? Like I do like high budget games.
Yeah, me too.
It's just that where are they going, I guess, is the
Yeah,
question.
what's the cost?
Where is that cap? I wonder if we're drawing kind of parallels to Hollywood a bit here. I wonder if we're going to get to the same place as Hollywood, which actually I'm not sure where Hollywood is. Like, I guess, did they stabilize over the years now, and they have like more or less kind of samey budgets for movies? I know there's obviously lower budget movies and higher, but like, let's say your standard Hollywood high budget movie, did they figure it out? Did they do they feel safer now making them? Don't know.
I mean, it seems like the growth has slowed down because they've realized that, I mean, this is all very carefully planned. And I think they've realized that, for example, Marvel movies, they've pretty much hit the maximum amount of people who are going to see a Marvel movie. They can't just raise the budget 100 million next time, because it's not going to make more than it's not going to make an extra 100 million at the box office if they do that. So there has, I mean, the Fast and Furious movies. I don't really watch Marvel, but for some reason I've seen all the Fast and Furious movies. The newest one has the biggest budget of all of them. It's 50 million higher than the previous one. But I don't think they're going to raise the budget a ton for the next one, because they can't. Like, there's just a question of how much can you even profit off of this.
Yeah, there's a lot to say about this, and actually, this is not part of this news story technically, but it also kind of relates to that whole thing about dev times, right? People are saying around 5 years is too long for making games, AAA games, and something needs to be done. But what can you do when these expectations, these budgets, when you have 200 million for a game, you're not going to like, how much more do you need to make the same quality game in 2 years instead of 5 years?
There's this interview with Amy Hennig, and she said she directed the Uncharted games, and she said that Uncharted 1 could never be made today, because Uncharted 1 is an 8-hour game with no multiplayer, no huge post-game content, nothing like that we expect out of modern full-price games. Which is just crazy, because Uncharted the Uncharted series was like the Hollywood cinematic high-budget, high-profile release of that generation. And to think that, that game came out, I guess it came out about 15 years ago now, but just the fact that you couldn't make that today, even though the gameplay is relatively similar to what we get in a game like The Last of Us.
What, The Last of Us 2, does it have multiplayer? I don't think it does.
No, it doesn't. It was supposed to have it. The first one did. Uncharted 4 did.
Well, then in that case, this kind of goes against what you're saying, right?
They were going to launch with multiplayer, and then they've now pushed it into its own standalone game. But the Last of Us 2 is like what? It's like a 20-30 hour game. It's more than double the length of the first game. And that's because consumers expect more these days, right?
Yeah, I mean, Uncharted 4 was pretty high budget, to be honest. And that one, I think that had multiplayer.
It had multiplayer, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've never, I never even touched multiplayer in that game.
Pretty fun, actually.
Yeah, crazy times. I think it will come to a head at sometime in the near future. Something will have to break, something will have to give. I'm just wondering what it is.
Yeah, I mean, we're playing with fire. Like, what happens if everyone wakes up tomorrow and says they don't want to watch superhero movies anymore? These companies could genuinely go out of business.
Yeah,
and potentially the same thing could happen with, I don't know, EA, Microsoft, Sony. Who knows?
Yep.
Other big piece of news is, well, it's not just one piece of news, but there's been a lot of rumblings about physical game releases lately. The new Yakuza is not getting a physical release in the West, so you can only buy a disc-based copy in Asia. Alan Wake 2 is not getting any physical release anywhere. And Starfield, at first there was a rumor that there wasn't, or one of the social media accounts said they weren't going to have a physical disc. Now they're saying that they will. I don't think that's a company walking back, because it takes a long time to print the discs and get them into stores and stuff, so they would have decided on this stuff long ago. But it looks like physical media with games is starting to actually die out this time.
Yeah, I mean, it's a news piece, but I feel like it's been going to that direction.
Yeah, it's a long time coming.
For me, it's the same conversation as the games preservation. And actually, not just that, in this case of newer games, it's also like, what do you do when I'm not going to say, when you don't have an internet, like whatever, most people have internet, right? Even in villages, whatever. Like, I'm sure there's some people who live in mountains and don't have internet, but I think for those people, playing games online is not their main concern. But I'm just saying, I don't know, you have issues with the internet, right? You have some downtime. there's something wrong with your connection or whatever, like at that point you just can't play the game unless you have it installed. And sometimes not even then, because sometimes some single player games need you to be always online.
Yep. Well, I mean, in the future, what happens if the PSN goes down and the only way to play Sniper Elite 5 is to play the 1.0 release? Like, God, that would not be the ideal way to play the game, let's just say. We fixed a lot of things with the day one patch, but players won't have access to that. Or what happens if you want to remember, I don't know, Fortnite when it came out? I mean, World of Warcraft Classic exists for a reason.
Well, even with Sniper Elite, yes, you will be playing 1.0, but at least we'll be playing it, right? But in this future, if PSN goes down and your Alan Wake was on PSN and that's the only copy you had, you're shit out of luck. Right?
Yeah, it's. I mean, I guess the point is that preservation is it's so much more than just discs. But it is a shame that this stuff's going. Also, I like to collect things physically, and I wonder if how many copies they're even going to print of this new Yakuza in Asia. I suspect they won't print too many because most people are buying them digitally anyway. And then, people in the West, some collectors are going to try and buy these things. Just the fact that they're not supplying them to these people is kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean, like another example of this is if you want to buy a super collector's edition of Diablo 4, you can buy it. You'll get, this, that, cloth map, something else,
but no disc.
And then no disc. There's not just no disc. You're not even getting a code to the game. You have to buy it separately.
Oh man.
Yeah. But yeah, this I mentioned PSN specifically because I remember that there was not that long ago PSN was, and it wasn't hacked, right? It was just like DOS attacked so much that it went down. I think actually a couple of years ago it was hacked, and it was like a week before it went back up. Look, the point is that they can go down, right? They're not perfect. And what's happening with the older PSN on PS3, right? It's hanging by a thread.
Yeah. I mean, Sony shouldn't have to keep those servers running forever, but it just raises larger questions about accessibility. And some of it comes back to this preservation and things. Like when the PSN goes down, everyone should know that they can really, really easily soft mod their PS3, and then you can load any game you want onto it. And if Sony would, as long as Sony will sell games on the PSN, people will buy them. But once that happens, once they shut that down, there's no reason that you shouldn't do that to your console, because otherwise there's just no way that you're going to be able to play so much of the amazing library. But the fact that you have to resort to questionably legal tactics over this stuff is such a shame.
Yeah, I mean, these companies, they're not in the business of preservation.
Yeah, they don't care, right? There's no money in it.
Yeah, they just need to make new games, sell these new games, and if there's money to be made in providing access to older games, they'll do it as long as it makes sense to them. But the actual preservations, the real preservation, is not on their agenda, I guess. And until that becomes profitable, or profitable in a secondary way, that will not change. I think Microsoft maybe kind of spends a bit more time thinking about this in general.
My Xbox One is not an Xbox One console. I don't know if I have actually the only Xbox One game I have on it right now is Rare Replay. Everything else is an original Xbox or an Xbox 360 title that I own physical copies of those back in Canada, and I've just bought them again just so I can have them upscaled to 1080p on my HD TV. That's awesome. I'll double dip. I'll give them extra money just to have access to this game. The emulator on the Xbox for the Xbox One and Xbox original Xbox 360 is better than the fan emulators. So of course I'm going to give Microsoft money because they're offering a great product.
So can you actually buy? I guess it's not all games, right?
No, not all, but they're pretty good about having a decent selection of original Xbox titles and a lot of 360 titles.
Yeah, fair enough. Still probably not perfect, and honestly, at the end of the day, this will become a much more of a bigger issue for these older, think PS1, PS2 type of games that were never on any of these services, and they're just out there by themselves somewhere on a disc and nowhere else.
Or even worse, some of these things that are on really bespoke hardware, like Sega Saturn emulation is coming along, but there are some arcade games that are not, you cannot run in an emulator, and they might not ever get to a good state in an emulator. And good luck finding one of those cabinets, because they are rare and unemulatable for a reason.
we'll see how this goes. I'm hoping that when this becomes much more of a big issue, someone out there will come up with some kind of workable solution. Maybe that's everyone can contribute to, and that won't be stopped by Nintendo's lawyers or something else.
They say something like 80% of films that were released before the 1930s have been lost to time, because the time they were on, very flimsy, highly flammable film reels, and people just didn't know the value of these things because they were kind of seen as a curiosity until about the 30s. And there is a chance right now to preserve a ton of early gaming history before these tapes decay or the people who worked on them pass away and they can't be interviewed and things like that. Or before people who understand this hardware retire or pass away or things like that. So I hope that these days are moving. The nice thing is that because hardware is moving to unified architecture, it's all x86 based. It's pretty easy. Theoretically, it will be very easy to emulate a PS4 once you have the processing power to do so. But it's the older stuff that I'm a little more worried about. And hopefully we don't lose that stuff like we've lost early films.
Yeah, I hope as well. Right, okay. I think that was that for the news. We'll take a quick break and we'll come back with our first game, Transformers War for Cybertron.
Sounds good.
Hey everyone, we're back with Transformers War for Cybertron. Now, Ian, I know that I'm taking you out of your comfort zone here a bit, and actually, it's a bit of a point of the show in a way. Trying games that maybe we are not used to and haven't played before at all. Tell me in general your kind of history with this franchise.
I might have watched. I think maybe I watched the first Michael Bay movie.
Okay, so you've never watched the original G1, the cartoons?
No.
Okay. So this came out back in 2010, and back then it was only 3 years after the original after the Michael Bay movie, the first one, because I think that came out in about 2007, and obviously Michael Bay went a completely different way in terms of aesthetics and the themes of like the visual look of the Transformers, and that's why this was very surprising when High Moon came out with this game that really took the G1 visuals and kind of ran with it. This looks a bit more modern than the original G1, the original cartoons, but it really is within the spirit of those visuals from back then.
I think if it looks any different, it's probably because they're leaning into what Unreal Engine 3 was good at, which is this kind of faux Gears of War style.
Sorry guys, I'm not sure how I will edit this video, but we are in case I do leave some of this in, we're having a few technical issues here with audio and just gameplay as well. It looks like we're getting actually some bugs here.
I'm an excellent QA tester. I'm really good at finding bugs in games.
We'll carry on, and Ian, tell me what's your first impressions. I think you mentioned that it kind of reminds you of Gears of War.
Yeah, I mean, this is of a certain time and place, and you can tell that they are leaning into what the kinds of visuals that Unreal Engine 3 was really good at the time, which is this kind of faux Gears of War look. And the gameplay too seems like, at first glance, seems like this kind of third-person shooter, right? Which is what Unreal Engine 3 is really good at. So that's probably some of the reasons why this game turned out so well, is that they worked with the technology and what they had available.
Yeah, it definitely, the gameplay definitely felt smooth back in the day, and it probably still is. They didn't really go overboard with anything crazy here. There's nothing new or you know, they're not reinventing the wheel here. And I think they really worked well for this game, for both of those games, where they're really focused on fun gameplay, fun like shooting mechanics and transforming, and like kind of just fun robot battles. Really, they're really kind of scrappy at often in this game, so that kind of works a lot, works in favor, I think.
Yeah, this is a very. I mean, when this came out, this must have had very good graphics for the time, for about 2010. You can tell that this is a big budget game that got a lot of love and attention.
Yeah, and also obviously this is still, at the end of the day, this is stylized, right? So it also works in that favor for them, because even today, I'm looking at this game right now, it still looks great.
So is this a prequel to? Well, I know Transformers is a big series, but is this a prequel to the television show or something?
Right, so it's, yes, because it is prequel to the TV show, because this tells the story of the events that happened just before the Transformers crashed on Earth in their Ark ship millions of years ago, right? So this is what led to them leaving their homeworld and reaching Earth. Now, obviously, Transformers kind of over the years, it came out in different forms, cartoons, movies, comics as well. And I think, I'm a fan of Transformers, but I haven't read and seen all of it. So I think there's certain variations and different takes on some of the storylines, just like kind of like Star Wars, I guess. You can kind of equate it to that. But this is probably the most commonly agreed canon, where there was a war on Cybertron between Autobots and Decepticons, and that war led to the destruction of the Cybertron and forced all of them essentially off planet, and they found themselves on Earth.
Have you played the Gears of War games at all? Any of them?
No, not at all.
Okay. To know. Yeah, transforming into a car, which I'll do here. It's so I mean, it just feels like such a great gamey thing. I know it makes sense for the source material, but it's kind of like, man, I want more games where you can turn into a car at will. Like, why not?
Yeah, so I guess this, I'm not sure how I don't quite remember how they kind of explained this or kind of headcanon around this, but obviously, originally, at least in the cartoons, they came to Earth and to hide, right? That's the famous a famous phrase, like robots in disguise. They would disguise themselves as cars, as everyday vehicles in the human world, not to stand out. But obviously, on the planet, on their own home planet, like, why would they need to transform? I mean, again, I don't remember if they actually addressed that either directly or maybe in some logs or codex or whatever. But if they don't, to be honest, it's not something you should probably think too hard on. You could just say, like, well, you know what? They just have two forms and one is better than the other. I think in these games, the robot form is where you can shoot, and the car and the vehicle form is more of delegated to, like, maybe traversal stuff or kind of like more speed, right? So you, like, if you need to get there, get to it from A to B quicker, you will transform into a car. Actually, no, never mind. I think you're shooting with that car.
I am.
No, yeah, never mind.
You get the slower cannon with the car. I'm out of ammo.
Yeah, I know that in the case of like certain Transformers that can fly, obviously then it becomes a bit more important to transform and fly somewhere. So there's a big difference there between a robot form and a plane form. But when it's a car, I guess you're still faster than in car form.
Do you know where I get extra? Oh, I just got ammo for my car. Okay. Oh, okay. I have ammo now. I don't know where I got ammo, but it was weird that I ran out of ammo.
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess it would have been an interesting design problem, right, for them to solve. Like, why would you ever transform into a car? in this kind of world and setting.
What did the Transformers do before the 20? If they've been on Earth for millions of years, what did they do before the 20th century, before cars showed up?
So again, it's certain different takes, I guess, in different mediums, but they were just in like frozen state or like disabled until I think Dinobots kind of awoken before, like as first batch was Dinobots. That's why they're Dinobots, because they scanned the dinosaurs, and although in this game, in the second one, I think Dinobots appear on Cybertron. I don't remember how they explained that.
Oh, you know what? You know what I did watch? I did watch Beast Wars.
Right.
In
yes.
the 90s.
Transformers Beast Wars.
Yeah, they were robot dinosaurs and robot monkeys and stuff.
Yeah. It was so good. One of my favorite Transformers.
Oh, really?
Yeah. That show is so great. I love it. That's why I was looking forward to this new movie that came out, which was called Beast. I think it was called Beast Wars or something. And it was such a disappointment. Oh. Man, what a bad movie. Yeah, it had nothing to do with those Beast Wars. Like, there were Dinobots, but it was horrible.
Transformers is known for having pretty good games, right? I did play a bit of just Transformers on PS2.
I think I don't remember other games other than these two being good. And in fact, I guess we can just get into this. I mentioned in the last episode that I want to talk about kind of the unfortunate fate of Dark Moon Studios and in connection with these games. And that is that, they made this game in 2010. Then they made Fall of Cybertron in 2012. And then in around 2013, around the time they released Deadpool, there were a bunch of layoffs. Activision laid off a bunch of developers from High Moon. And the following year, Activision partnered with other studios and released Rise of the Dark Spark, another Transformers game, and that game was so bad. I haven't played it, but from what I've read, it was really not well received, and it tried to do some really weird things with the lore. It tried to kind of bridge these two games with the Michael Bay movies. It was kind of like half of the game was dealing with the lore of these games, and then the other half was dealing with the lore of the movies, and it was just a hot mess. It was just not a good game in general. And I know, who knows what happened afterwards. I don't want to, again, on this show, we try not to kind of speculate too much. We have not been there, right? We were not working on these games. I'm sure there were licensing considerations. Obviously, Hasbro probably wanted to push those movies a lot harder than they wanted to push these games, as beloved as they became. Like, I'm sure that back then the movies were selling way more, and they probably considered it a much bigger investment. And eventually, High Moon just became essentially a Call of Duty support studio, which is really unfortunate. Again, I'm not sure what led to that exactly, if it was just these games and the relationship with Hasbro, or there were other issues with the studio.
The fate of many good Activision studios, it seems, right? Raven's a
right, but
example.
but again, obviously players kind of took that and constructed their own narrative, saying that the Activision did High Moon dirty. Who knows? Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. Right? We're not there, and we need to be careful about kind of making these conclusions without knowing any sort of facts. I will say, from my personal perspective, I would obviously be really disappointed creatively if I was working on these two games, then suddenly the next thing I can only do is work on as a support for Call of Duty. Mm-hmm. That would be extremely disappointing to me personally.
Yeah, I mean, not to postulate too much, but around that time was when Activision was getting out of licensed franchises like Tony Hawk as well. So, who knows? I'm assuming you can't even buy this game on digital platforms anymore, right? Because of licensing.
Right. So, funny thing you mentioned that, because I actually have a very topical news article that just came out recently. Honestly, guys, we don't do this on purpose. It was just very good timing. So you cannot buy these games on Steam anymore. Mm-hmm. I guess anywhere really. And there was recently a some sort of Transformers Fest, and a representative from Hasbro was asked, "Hey, what about all these older games? Some of the other Transformer games, like these two games, we can't get them on Steam. Can you get them on Xbox Game Pass?" And they were like, "Well, yes, that would be really nice, but unfortunately, our partner Activision, or former partner, told us that they lost the code for these games somewhere in hard drives."
Classic.
So we're hoping that with this with Microsoft purchasing Activision, they will be able to find that, and then maybe we can bring them. And then there was an update from Activision saying, "Yo, this guy from Hasbro is full of shit. We did not lose any code. We have all of them."
Yeah, I mean, what does the Microsoft buyout have to do with them finding the source code, right?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, look, let's make something clear. That definitely happens. There's been several games in our industry and situations where developers says, "Look, we just can't find the code," right? Famously, recently, Mass Effect Legendary Edition, where Bioware said, "Hey, we don't have the DLC anymore anywhere." So we can't include there's some DLC in that edition. Although in the end, someone just modded it back in. So
that's for a relatively like a game from the 2010s. I mean, imagine if you're thinking about a game from 30 years ago. What are the odds that those tapes that have original assets on them haven't rotted away at this point, right?
Right, yeah. But yeah, I mean, the point is that it can happen. But this was not the case here at all. The Hasbro representative just had no idea what he was talking about, I guess. But yeah, so you can't buy them at the moment, but there's a chance they can come to Game Pass.
That'd be cool.
And and honestly, looking at you playing this game today, again, I mentioned it before, it holds up for sure. I think the stylized visuals really help, and they usually help, right? Whenever it's something stylized, it usually holds up better than more realistic games.
Yeah, definitely. This it definitely looks like a 2010 Unreal Engine 3 game, but for what it is, it looks good. Yeah, it'd be great if they put all of these Transformers games out on, even if they put them on one disc in some sort of big collection. I'd like to see more companies do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think there was one from Platinum Games as well. I haven't played that one either.
Yeah. There was an arcade shooter as well, a light gun shooter around this time. I think maybe that's based on the Bay ones, but Sega themselves made it, so it's actually not half bad.
Yeah.
I've seen
so, Ian, you're playing on controller, or are you playing on keyboard?
I'm playing a controller. For some reason, I'm getting, I guess because it's the PC version, I'm getting keyboard button prompts here.
Okay. But so how does it feel playing on the controller?
It feels all right. Not bad. I gotta say, you're saying that you play this on keyboard and mouse, right?
Now, it's been a while, but I will assume, knowing myself, I would have played this on mouse and keyboard, yes. Mostly because I don't like aiming with a controller, and I am against aim assist by principle. So you started here as Optimus, and as the story progresses, you will be switching to different Transformers. And I think, I'm not sure if it's in both games or just the Fall of Cybertron, you'll be also playing as Decepticons at some point.
How does this compare to its sequel?
It's very comparable. The sequel was, it was direct kind of continuation of the story, almost like, hey, let's have a tea break and then continue.
And is it better, do you think?
It's better, but only like, by only a bit.
Nice. So we got double jump air dash. I think every game should have a double jump air dash. There's my game design hot take of the day. Give every game areas where you need to double jump air dash to get some secrets. Just feels so good.
Did you have this from the start, or did you just get that from?
I've had it since the start.
Right. Okay.
It's interesting though. I do feel like they've given you a pretty nice little moveset here, but then you're not really there isn't really any verticality in the combat where you feel like you need to jump, let alone double jump, let alone double jump air dash.
Well, there's verticality in like an actual shooting, right? Like there's definitely a lot of things on screen, like up, down, left, and right.
There are, yeah. I guess. Well, it remains to be seen if they're actually promoting the use of. Well, here we go. Promoting the use of this movement in combat, as opposed to just aiming up and down.
Yeah, and actually here in this section, I'm seeing how they decided to kind of use the car form, vehicle forms, where they're like, okay, well, this is going to be where they definitely going to be using the cars, the vehicles, because they, you know, I guess they're not forced to do that, but it makes sense to be in a car.
I say it's because the vehicle is you. It's so seamless.
Yeah.
You never have to worry about the player finding the car or losing the car, or the car getting destroyed and then having to fail the mission or something like that. So they can just pretty seamlessly intersperse driving bits and action bits. It's interesting with the controls here. You can't actually steer left and right with the left analog stick, the movement stick. You actually steer left and right by moving the cursor left and right.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a weird choice.
Damage report. Is anyone hurt?
Nothing you can't fix.
This game also was really good at kind of pushing you forward all the time. There's action like nonstop. There's not going to be a hub world. There's not going to be a hub area. There's not going to be like any kind of. It's just going to be like, you know, start to finish, go.
Does that get exhausting, or are there enough opportunities to mix up the pacing?
I think I remember it being absolutely fine. I think like because of like the nature of the story they're trying to tell, it's has immediate urgency, right? Shit is going down. Like, let's go. We can't just sit here. There's no side quests. It's just we need to get to this place. We need to get this done, right? We need to save that Autobot or enable that kind of device or whatever. And honestly, it worked for me. For me, it worked, and that's what I was expecting, especially knowing where the story was going. Like, obviously, I didn't know every single story beat that they will have, but I knew that where this will eventually lead to.
Oh, whoops! I went to zoom in, and that hits the turbo in the car. Well, how long is this game as well? You know, how much of an issue is the pacing if it's a really short game?
I think it's. I don't think it was a very short game, but it was like a medium length, I think.
Okay.
But also,
what is medium? Like 8 to 12 hours?
Yeah, something like that. Again, it's been a while. I don't want to. I might be completely off, but I didn't feel that it was overstaying its welcome. And it has a multiplayer. The second game for sure. I think they both had multiplayer, and it was really fun. I like played a lot of multiplayer.
What's the multiplayer like?
Just like, I mean, think with your usual Gears of War type of modes, deathmatch, whatever,
Horde mode,
that type of stuff. Yeah, something like that.
Oh.
And you know, choose your transformer. You can choose to be a Decepticon that have planes, so you can be a plane, right? So
cool.
Flying vehicle. It was really fun.
So do the Decepticons play fundamentally different from the Autobots?
It's just, I think it's per robot, right? I think, well, Autobots have flying robots as well, and I think you might be playing as one of them, to be honest.
I got my double jump air dash.
There's the exit.
I remember the biggest thing that was new in the second game was the Dinobots. I think they kind of kept them for the second game.
Okay, so I realized the reason I was low on ammo was because it's the PC version. I was missing the button prompts that were actually for picking up weapons. I didn't realize that the text prompts on the screen were to pick up weapons. So I think it's the kind of game where you are encouraged to always be picking up, cycling between different weapons, because I don't think you can hold. Oh wait, okay, yeah. It wasn't clear about the controls, but I actually have two weapons that you can swap between. So basically, you can't just use one type of weapon. You got to keep swapping them out, or else you're gonna,
So you also have melee, right? He has his axe.
Yep.
And also, so do you have any weapon that has like infinite bullets, essentially, like a basic?
No, I don't think so. So that has limited ammo, so it's a slower cannon. Which I like. I like that you have, beyond just wanting to drive around, you have a different kind of gun. You have a slower moving cannon with the car, so there is a good reason to want to switch between them in combat, which is nice. Now, what is this stuff that I'm picking up when I kill enemies?
So that is the energon. That is essentially kind of the resource of their world, Cybertron. Although I guess you can technically mine it in on Earth as well. It's just like an energy that they form into cubes. I think I don't remember if this was the main reason for the war, or if there were like more political kind of differences between Optimus and Megatron. I think maybe a bit of both. But once they get to Earth, this was, Energon was one of the main kind of plot devices that would be used to kind of, start fights, do things, stuff like that. Essentially, energy source or resource that they often fight over.
I'm getting the impression you feel like this game does service to the source material narratively as well.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like this was the first game, at least from my perspective, that kind of showed off Cybertron in a really detailed way. You see all of these like facilities, just basic rooms and landscapes. At some point, like really massive robots will show up. At some point, I don't think we'll get to that in this 1 hour we have, but there's a lot of transformation just in the actual environments as well. The planet itself, I think, can transform, or like big parts of it can transform. Like at some point, there's some crazy shit happens in this game. So it's a really visually fan servicey, I guess, but that's really really good in this case, because Cybertron is not something that was ever explored too much, even in the original material. Obviously, Beast Wars was set on Earth. The G1 kind of starts with them already more or less on Earth as well. Obviously, in certain kind of episodes and different movies, maybe they kind of go back here and they have flashbacks and stuff like that. But I feel like this was the first IP, first kind of like media that I enjoyed of Transformers that really took Cybertron as a really serious thing and tried to kind of show it off.
Boss fight. I love when the bad guys have big, glowing weak points. Do you feel like there's any chance of getting more games like this in the future from Transformers, from Activision potentially?
Well, so apparently Hasbro has been apparently they never stopped kind of licensing out Transformers for making games, and a lot of them end up unfortunately being on mobile. I'm not gonna touch those. Have no interest in playing Transformers on mobile. There's a lot of like, I think I saw one that was like base building, kind of like had nothing to do with, it was really really bad. Just cash grab and kind of buying packs and stuff like that. Who knows? Money talks, right? If someone can convince them, they're definitely interested in putting these games on Game Pass. So that's already a start, right? So who knows if they do put it on Game Pass and a lot enough people buy them from there or play them, I guess, in terms of Game Pass, maybe that will encourage them, right? I will definitely buy a new game from High Moon, or if someone else can do another take on this.
Do you think maybe because this is the G1 style, that they targeted an older audience, which in this case was people who had big expensive video game consoles, but that the majority of Transformers stuff, at least these days, is on cell phones because they want to hit like a younger demographic?
Yeah, I don't know, right? Even the Michael Bay movies at this point, they are like what, 2007, so like 15 years ish, maybe a bit, something like that.
We call them Michael Bay movies. Does he still direct them?
He's still involved. Even the Beast Wars one, the latest one, he might have been not have been the director, but he was in the credits, right there, right? So, and that movie was, I don't want to. The recently one of the more successful kind of movies that I enjoyed was the Bumblebee movie, and it had certain elements, certain Transformer designs, and certain scenes that really reminded me of G1. There was a fight between Bumblebee and Jetfire, I think specifically. That was really, really good. That was the closest we ever got to Jetfire. Just looked amazing. That whole fight scene was so good.
Well, maybe because of the success of the Barbie movie, all those Hollywood executives are going to look at it and they're going to greenlight an Uno movie. They're going to greenlight as many Mattel, child toy properties as they can, right? So maybe we'll get a lot more Transformers stuff in the next few years.
Well, they keep making them, right? They just released the movie, but it's just not the movie I want.
Yeah.
So if they're gonna keep making those, I'm hard pass on those. At the very least, I'll say this, that these two games at least had like kind of a cliffhanger, but at least logical conclusion. Spoiler alert, they end with them leaving Cybertron and kind of going towards Earth, right? So that was the arc of the war in Cybertron was concluded with these two games at the very least. So it was technically cliffhanger, but the story that they were telling here on this planet was concluded.
I like that there's just bits of a freeway in the middle of this place. It reminds me of like oh shoot. It reminds me of like Sonic Adventure, where just sometimes you're moving around like a platformer, and then sometimes it's the fast bits, and the level just turns into highway strips.
Yeah, obviously they kind of build these to have you be in the vehicle mode, right? Do you feel that they are kind of shoehorned in, or
No.
they kind of?
I mean, it's cheesy, right? Like it's you could put anything. I feel like the level designers have a lot of leeway here because of the aesthetic. You can just kind of put anything in these levels, and it's believable because it's a sci-fi robot planet, right? So why not?
Right. Yeah. And I also like how they have the ceiling as glass, so as you're driving, you're seeing the environment, the rest of the city,
yeah.
right?
Yeah. I noticed as well that you actually don't have a ton of max health in this game. That your health bar can deplete pretty fast. I mean, I've already died. I wouldn't say I'm finding this challenging, but my health bar has dropped really low several times, and I've died a couple times already on the first chapter.
Did you choose?
I'm on normal.
On normal, right? Yeah. So it was just default.
But I wouldn't call this game hard. I just think that that it sort of designs that your health bars can go up and down pretty rapidly, which it adds a lot of tension to the fights.
It's a small thing, and maybe certain people wouldn't like that, but I appreciate that this game doesn't do the whole blurring your screen and doing bloody veins when your health goes down. Yeah, it does mean that if you're the type of person that needs that, it means that it's harder for you to notice when you're dying. But me, I'm the opposite. I don't like that. It gets in my way. So I really like that they don't have that here.
That was especially bad during this time, I feel. I remember playing a lot of Call of Duty around this time, and the games were really bad for the heartbeat and the panting and the huge red vignetting around the screen when you're low on health.
Yeah, maybe they thought, hey, there won't be any heartbeats or veins in this case, so maybe we should just won't put them.
Maybe they could have had rust around the edges of the screen,
I mean, I'm sure they could have thought of something.
It's fine because you have a health bar, right? The health bar tells you how much health you have. And if you give
that's the thing, right? it's not enough in most cases nowadays. It's like you have a health bar, but you also need to bang you on the head over that you're dying.
I think there's a reasonable amount of feedback that you can have. I think this game is just fine. It's a very colorful game already, and there's lots of explosions going on, so it's probably good that they're not overwhelming my senses when I'm low on health. It's probably
and to be honest, like there's so many other ways you can do that, right? Like as a designer, I would just stop and think, how else can I do? And it's pretty easy in this case. Like make the robot you're controlling maybe spark, right? Maybe like limp, maybe like some sort of like mechanical failure on their body, like visual representation of their damage, not necessarily like some sort of full screen effect.
Well, sometimes it's hard to notice if you're in the middle of a fight what you're Transformer is looking like, but I don't know. I think this game is just fine. What? I was waiting for this to happen. I was like, one of these highways is going to give out on me.
I'm really hoping that we can get to a part where you're playing as someone else to kind of show off another Transformer.
So does each level choose your Transformer for you?
I remember that you didn't really have a choice. You
Yeah.
play as whoever they give you.
And what kind of meaningful differences are there between the characters? Just weapons? I guess your vehicle
weapons
is
for
different.
sure. Yeah, weapons and vehicle. That's pretty much it. And obviously, if you're playing as a flying vehicle, then they construct the level appropriately based on that, which you would expect that, right? So if you're playing as some flying Transformer, you would be having these.
Okay, so we got these blue scan lines going on when you're low enough.
Yeah, they do have it, right? Huh. Okay, well, never mind. I guess.
Yeah, I mean
thematic, but still there.
It's of a certain time, right?
Well, it's definitely a lot less intrusive than veins and heartbeat.
Oh, so
just heartbeat.
So this is one of those health systems. It's missile inbound. What the heck? Okay, there is a lot going on right now. So this is one of those games where you have a slightly regenerating health bar. You can see that there's 4 notches in the health bar, and it will regenerate me to the next notch. So you're not punished for little mistakes, but you're punished for larger mistakes in combat, which is all right. You don't want to slow the player down like this, though.
What's your stance in general on that? Do you think it depends on the game, or
definitely.
all games should have this, or all
definitely
games should not
depends on
have
the
this?
game. But I think, if you want like a really fast-paced game, then the only downside to this is that it's encouraging me to get away from the fight a little bit and slow down, which maybe that's what they want, because in this case I'm slowing down and I'm finding some health and ammo. But so far it's been a pretty fast-paced experience. So I mean, there's all kinds of different ways that you can do it. I'm not sure exactly what would be the best implementation here.
You were right about the pacing, right? That's what it does to the game. Like if you didn't have that regen health and you were really low, you would have to stop and look around for health, or just kind of be really cautious, and the pacing would really slow down. But if you want a game to kind of like have this steady pacing and kind of push you forward, regenerating health is probably a good bet.
The other thing is this:
a good idea.
I think regenerating health makes more sense in a game like this, where you have mostly hit scan enemies. So the enemy's bullets are going to instantly hit you, and oftentimes you can't count on not getting hit. You're going to take at least some bullets from the opponent. So having a system in place that doesn't punish little mistakes is probably, I'd say, pretty important. Whereas if this is a game where enemy attacks are slow and they're big projectiles that you need to dodge, maybe you don't need any regenerating health. The new Doom games, for example, they don't have regenerating health because that's the kind of game where you can fundamentally anticipate and avoid every enemy's attacks.
Right, yeah. And also, this game doesn't have cover, does it?
No, not really. I mean, the environments are pretty massive and pretty chunky, and there isn't a ton of cover.
Well, yeah, I guess it has natural cover, but there's no sticky cover. You're not,
It's definitely not that kind of
you're
game.
not really, yeah.
One thing is, because these are big environments, it's really encouraging me, I think, to move around a lot and pick up a different weapon, or pick up some health, or pick up some ammo, or get to a different vantage point because of enemies. There's been a lot of sniper enemies that are in there to just mix things up and get you at a better angle to hit your opponent, because this big main weapon I have here isn't super accurate from long distances. So there's a lot that they're doing to keep the player from standing in one place, which I think these kinds of games, these kinds of Gears of War style third-person shooters, what separates a lot of the good ones from the bad ones is, can you just stand in one place and aim and shoot? Because that's like, I mean, look what I'm doing here, right? I'm kind of just popping in and out. That's kind of boring. But if this is anything like that boss from before, then I need to, oh my God. Okay. Whoa. All right. Really, if I need to get up closer to this guy and, consider different approaches,
Yeah, I remember
It's a little
this
more
game
exciting.
having quite a few interesting and like visually impressive bosses on like a larger scale, and yeah, there's definitely variety in that.
I'm kind of surprised the game never really explained any of itself. This is kind of that era where I would have thought that there would be really obnoxious, lengthy tutorials. But I'm kind of surprised there's no tutorials. Like if I press right bumper, I get this. I think it's like a super attack. This thing here, or maybe it's just like a melee thing. I don't really know what I'm doing here when I do that. The game hasn't explained it to me. I'm just a bit surprised.
Yeah, I don't know if like I wonder if they kind of chose to kind of hide them under menus and out of the way in favor of keeping this kind of high pace, right?
Well, if there was even just some tool tips, that could be nice. I think I saw at the main menu there was a tutorial thing, but I'm not going to go into a dedicated tutorial. It's 2010, right? We're at the point where we are shoving these things down players' throats and making sure nobody misses them. You know?
Yeah, there's never like I think this is one of those things that is going to be there's not right answer. Some people like tutorials right there and explain every single game mechanic, and some players just hate them.
Does anyone actually like when a
I
game sits
don't
down and
know.
explains everything to you? Yeah, so I mean, maybe that boss was actually an example of an enemy of a level or of an encounter that isn't particularly exciting, because it felt like I was mostly just holding in the right trigger and strafing back and forth a little bit. But most of them up to this point have been good at getting me to move around the environment and think
Yeah, and
strategically.
remember that this is still really early game, right? We've been here about half an hour, so I really like how the bits on the Optimus like move around.
Yeah, I was
It's
just gonna say one thing that that you hear. I'm not an artist. One thing you hear about, especially third-person games, is that characters need to have an interesting model from behind, because we think of characters as being viewed from the front, but in these kinds of games, you're only looking at them from behind.
Yeah.
I think there's some story about Naughty Dog when they were working on Crash Bandicoot. They called the original prototype Sonic's ass, because to them they saw it as a Sonic game where all you did was look at Sonic's ass, because this is a very early 3D platformer, right? So yeah, this is certainly just always having things to look at, always having things going on the back of Optimus Prime, to put it politely. I'm not trying to make a dirty joke about this, but it does make things more interesting visually. Where to go from here? Some light platforming.
So your
Oh no, there's just an invisible
next-
wall blocking me.
oh,
Okay, so this isn't the way to go.
so your next objective is always the blue marker.
And here? No, that's gonna kill me.
No, I think you're.
Yep.
Well, now we know that you can die from falling.
Oh, okay. So I have to jump at the moving platforms. I couldn't stand over there. It's a bit confusing. Yep. Good way to make the player stop and notice.
I know, right? It's
Do you like that 8 frames?
really cool.
Those 8 frames of pre-rendered video.
I like
It
it.
feels like a PS1, like a 90s thing,
Yeah.
you know. Kind of like it. Oh, I went too far. Oh. Can I? Yeah.
Experiencing my rule. I shall not be denied.
What do you think about voice work here?
I mean, it's good. It's the same voices from the show, right? These are
Well,
iconic for a
I
reason.
think the Optimus reprises his role. He always does, and the rest of them, I'm not sure. I guess they don't really have iconic voices.
Oh, okay.
So you know,
I
whoever
think it's
does
fine.
them.
Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, I like the little platforming mixes it up. I was getting a bit tired of the shooting. I think stuff like this it's come at just the right time. Let's put it that way. Is there any beyond a little bit of light platforming, some driving bits? Is there any other stuff that mixes up the gameplay for you, like puzzles or things like that?
Honestly, I
No?
don't quite remember if there were any puzzles. If there are, there'll probably be something like very obvious that you have to kind of more of like a busy work puzzles rather than actual kind of like brainy puzzles, I guess.
Yeah.
I remember this game being mostly about moving forward and kind of firefights. So yeah, but it does have these moments of kind of traversal and obviously driving, and I think they definitely kind of felt probably that they need to pace it appropriately, like kind of have these quieter moments in between, and I think it actually makes sense in most games where combat is a big focus. Because no matter what, and no matter how good combat is, it can get a bit tiring, right? If you're just shooting nonstop.
Yeah, definitely.
I think the levels where you play as a flying vehicle, those I felt were a bit more toned down in terms of actual just fighting and shooting. Naturally, because you're flying a lot in those, you're mostly flying, so they kind of just work that way.
That's a big set piece. I do feel like maybe one of the problems with these levels, either the art style or the level design, the areas being so abstract, is that a lot of the environments have kind of blended together for me.
Right, yeah. It's also a game that don't really like. You can kind of move to the sides and around the enemies, right? But you're not really. The game doesn't really give you the time to kind of actually explore, right? Not even like, oh, is there like a secret in that room I'm seeing from here? Not really that. You don't really have time for that kind of stuff. So maybe they kind of had to design these spaces around that, right? It would have probably been a waste.
Whoa. Ah. Yeah, I see what you mean. Maybe it's just visually, because these areas are all that kind of neon, which looks cool. But if you use that, I mean, I'm not an artist, but I think even visually you can maybe solve that problem, where some areas could look more, more open or more claustrophobic, or more bright or more dark or more red or more blue. Let's see. This is actually a I'm not going to call it a challenge, but it's for a game of 2010, it's not as brain dead on normal mode as games of that era tended to be. You have to think a little bit when you run into big combat engagements.
Yeah. Look at this cool guy.
What a cool guy.
Optimus, the communication grid is located at the top of the decagon. We need to find a lift up.
You've got the schematics, Ratchet. Lead the way.
Hurry up! I'm not gonna stand here like this all day!
So this is a good example of an area that feels more distinctive. Because now we've got these tall pillars and this closed-in ceiling.
Yeah, I hope that the art team and level design team had really good time kind of imagining these spaces and how they could have looked on Cybertron.
From what I understand, Unreal 3 is kind of when level design tools started getting worse, and the focus became on modular kits. But maybe before we got level designers became really good with things like Blender for whiteboxing. Just speculation, but it does seem like it was a period where it was a bit tougher than usual to white box environments and things like that. This looks like it was. I mean, it's not bad level design, but it looks like the levels have been built by placing big modular meshes.
Yeah, I guess you can make it work with that as well. At the end of the day, you need to make it work based on what the game needs and how it plays.
Is this the kind of enemy where you need to, maybe dash? There was that one boss that really punished you with that purple wave beam for not dashing. But I don't feel like I've had to dash too much aside from that. Oh, I like this this kind of EMP thing going on where it scrambles my HUD.
Oh, nice. This guy is kicking your ass a bit.
Just a little bit. He's kicking all three of our butts.
I mean, this is kind of maybe an example of. I mean, you're still shooting, right? But it's not kind of. It's just one one enemy. So I like that they included this as well. Still combat, but
Yeah.
a different type, just to differentiate. Have different kind of types of encounters, I guess.
I do feel like the enemies are maybe a bit bullet spongy. It feels like everyone has a lot of HP in this game, except for me. Which I don't mind that, but
Wait, is he getting powered from the door thing, and you have to shoot the door?
Yeah,
Is that what's happening
no,
here?
No, because I don't think so. Because it looks like my objective is.
Or those there's like those two things, yeah. Is that?
No, they're not turning red.
Maybe he's just tough.
I mean, if I have to do something else, I don't feel like the game's communicating it very well.
No, I think you're getting there.
I think he just had a stupid amount of health.
So actually, you are picking up Energon, but I don't quite remember what it does for you, because it's certainly not healing you. I don't remember this game having any skills or anything like that, or any like skill points. So I don't remember what it does actually.
Maybe we'll find out between chapters. This looks like a bit of a light puzzle room. There you go. Shoot the thing to make it turn blue. That's all you need sometimes.
Nice.
Good job. The grid is back online. Let's get to the broadcast room up top so we can reconnect Iacon's defenses.
The elevator's busted. How do we get up there?
We could ride the Energon shell capacitors instead. Might take a little longer, but it should work.
Let's do it.
Oh, they.
Then
Okay.
we can strike back at the Decepticons in full force.
I mean, the environments do have to be kind of large in order for the vehicle to really work, right? If they were cramped, when the interiors are cramped, you can't use your car form.
Yeah. So do you think what would you do? What do you prefer in terms of visuals, the G1 or the Michael Bay stuff?
Probably the G1 stuff from. Oh shoot. Probably the G1 stuff. It'd be kind of cool if they made something like this these days. I would think that Unreal Engine has got to the point where they could do it with like cell shaded visuals, and they can make it look closer to the original show. give it kind of a cartoony look.
I think actually it was done like that in certain games back then. I think maybe Platinum game, the one from Platinum, was closer to that. But I actually always preferred this. It kind of took that G1 and imagine what if they actually look like that in almost real life, right? I mean, you can make them probably even better today, but I really like this metallic. You know, at the end of the day, this world is all metal, right? Like how do you make it so that it looks like when you have one material to work with?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what could be done. At least, I mean, from what I remember, that the Platinum thing does look, maybe a bit more closer to what I'm thinking of. But what could you do today? Because I think especially Unreal Engine has really gotten better at doing different visual styles.
Yeah, just makes me sad to think that no one is making Unreal Engine 5 game, Transformers game today. It's kind of crazy.
I think, this game had a big budget for 2010, but by today's standards, it's probably pretty small. And I wonder if maybe even a company like Activision is a little scared of making a giant budget Transformers game and giving some of the profits to Hasbro when the budget could be like, the equivalent budget would be like $200 million or something crazy like that for these quadruple A games.
That's the thing, right? Why would you make something where you have to share the profit?
How do you make a Transformers game when every game has to be open world with crafting and a skill tree, right? And a really serious, deep story.
Yeah.
They almost don't make linear action games like this anymore, with just a few exceptions. At super AAA budget levels, right? Everything is nothing is like an 8 to 12 hour game anymore. Everything big budget has to be like a 40-hour game.
I guess you can find a balance. Last of Us did it, right? They had light crafting and certain skills, I think, and still managed to mostly capture people's attention.
Sony seems like they're keeping the super high budget linear narrative driven game alive, almost by themselves, it seems. But yeah, that's well beyond the scope of this game anyway. It's just crazy to think that this is like the de facto gameplay style of 2010, and for better or worse, in 2023, they don't make these kinds of games anymore. Did
Ratchet just heal you, by the way?
He did, yeah. What a bro.
I didn't notice that before. I guess I guess that's the question. Like, do you feel like they are? Do you notice the difference, or just do you notice them being there and helping you?
That's the first time I noticed them helping me out.
Well, obviously they also shoot.
Actually, we don't need to get super into it, but a couple of years ago, I played Call of Duty World War II, the single player. And I know not a lot of people like that game. I think maybe because of the multiplayer, but the single player, I thought what I really liked about it was that you have these AI squad mates that actually give you resources during combat. And they're actually very powerful resources. I mean, you do things like help them during a firefight. It will increase their affinity with you. And then you can sort of spend that. It basically, helping them in combat increases a meter so that you can then press a button to have them give you grenades in combat or give you health or ammunition or things like that. And they actually had like a really fulfilling buddy mechanic in combat, which you just don't see that often for some reason. It's probably a lot of work.
Yeah. I guess in this case, if nothing else, they're here to kind of have a chat with you and kind of discuss what's going on with you and the player by extension.
Yeah.
And
the Transformers work as a team, right? So it would be a little weird if Optimus was by himself. And ultimately, I mean, this is just what pretty much every game had in 2010 as an AI buddy. It was just novel to have an AI buddy that you didn't have to babysit because, I mean, I'm sure you can remember a time before this where every game had a level, or every game that had a level where you had to protect an AI buddy, and it was the worst thing ever because they would walk into spikes or get themselves killed and you had to restart the mission or something like that.
Yeah, I think sometimes that mechanic gets flack, even though you can actually spend some time and actually design it in an interesting way. I think God of War, the recent God of War, did that.
Well, these
more
days
or
I
less.
think games are quite good at it.
Yeah.
So the point is, around this time, AI buddies were just something that you didn't have to worry about, and before this, they were something you always had to worry about. And now, I mean, probably Last of Us and BioShock Infinite were the two. Well, no, actually, BioShock Infinite didn't do a ton with it, but I would say maybe around Last of Us is when a lot of games started doing really good buddies that enhance
Well,
combat.
BioShock had that thing where she would give
a
you
little bit,
ammo
yeah,
when you
yeah.
run out, right? So
I thought maybe Last of Us is a little better with that. And yeah, a lot of games have it now.
You've done more than enough already. Autobots, exercise caution. Starscream is as dangerous as he is treacherous.
Just give me a clear shot.
I feel like we got a boss fight coming up.
what makes you say that? So I think we're not gonna get to like a different robot in this an hour we have, but we will get to the conclusion of this mission. I'm pretty sure this is probably gonna be it.
Cool.
So I'm happy with that.
Oh, I have grenades? Okay. Why are the Decepticons so evil?
Because they're just badass.
So they're just evil because they're evil? Was it Transformers that had like PSAs about not trusting strangers and helping old ladies cross the street and stuff like that? Did they have that in the original cartoons? I think they should put some of that in these games. Like on the loading screens or something. Maybe Optimus Prime could tell you about being a respectful gamer when you play online, not being toxic.
Yeah, no thanks. I mean, another thing that this game did that I was thankful for is that it didn't have any human characters.
Mm-hmm. I should have swapped this weapon. It was way too slow for this guy. This is one of those frustrating enemies where you spend most of the time waiting to get a clear shot. And meanwhile, he can hit you with homing attacks.
Yeah, it's interesting that this dome has these holes that so when he flies, he can fly us in a circle, but only in certain locations, openings that you can actually shoot him.
Yeah, it's smart. Oh, he came down. Oh my god, he's so fast. I guess this is kind of teasing you in a way about what the Decepticons can do when you get to play as them. So you could fly around like a bumblebee. Not like Bumblebee, but
Wait a sec.
Fly like a butterfly, sting like a bumblebee. Jesus, he's fast. This is actually frustrating. I feel like maybe he's moving faster than my flimsy controller cursor. Oh.
Oh, you're getting fucked.
Well, apparently getting close to him was not the thing to do.
Yeah, he has that special move.
How do I use my grenades? Oh, Y? Y? Maybe?
G, Y? F?
B. Okay.
Okay.
I don't think they're going to hit him. They gave me... Well, maybe that did work.
Are they sticky grenades?
I don't know. I mean, this is a good example of attacks, though, that you get to use the dodge on. Which feels pretty good.
Yeah, and I like how they use the transforming of Starscream as two different kind of phases. Not phases, but two different modes to fight him. So when he's off plane, he's flying around, you have to like fight him up there, and then he transforms back into robot mode, and suddenly he's on the floor, and now you have to like evade his other attacks and
Oh, this screen shake is out of control. Gosh, need ammo. I do feel like I struggle a lot to get ammo.
I wonder if you get more armor or like more defenses in vehicle mode. Doesn't look like it, but that would make sense.
Yeah. Oh, I almost got him. Are there even any lady robots?
Yes. I don't remember if she appears in this or the next game, but technically yes.
You'll see me again, Autobots! That's a promise!
Run, you yellow-plated coward!
Good work, Autobots. Now, let's coordinate the city's defenses.
To anyone receiving this broadcast, this is...
And he's who we have to save.
I am being held captive in Megatron's Chaos prison complex.
Brian is alive. Ratchet, home in on that signal and boost it. On it!
I am downloading vital information that could help the Autobots win the war. Hurry, Autobots. I don't know how much longer I have.
Optimus, let's go! We have to save Zeta
I
Prime!
don't like Bumblebee's lips. just gonna level with you.
Stop looking at them.
Cybertron did to him. No one could survive that. Even if there is the smallest possibility that Zeta is alive, we must act.
Optimus, it's a trap. Surely you see that.
A chance we'll have to take. Hang on, Zeta, my friend. I have a plan.
Okay.
Right. I guess we can leave it here. That was you see, interesting. So, chapter 6 was the one you just played.
Okay.
Did you end up skipping unintentionally into that?
What? I sure hope not. How does that even work?
Yeah, maybe that's just how it works in general. You start with chapter 6 and go back to chapter 1.
If that's how the narrative works. That felt like the first level to me because it was big and explosive.
But now you have a choice. That's interesting. I guess I forgot about that.
Yeah, so maybe, this is an Autobot campaign and this is the Decepticon stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, that's
Yeah, I
kind of
guess we
cool.
can just
So you
play
can see
them,
the timeline.
yeah.
So you could do stuff before the events that you just played. It's kind of neat.
Yep. Cool. That was War for Cybertron, a game that did a lot of things right, and back in the day, kind of just straight up, just by existing, challenged what Transformers were becoming. I was really happy with this game, both of them. And I think now in hindsight, I feel like this game, both of them, did something similar to what Hitman did when it came out in a reimagined form as a World of Assassination, where they kind of they realized, let's just embrace the gaminess of some of these mechanics, right? In Hitman, it was the way you would move and kind of the way stealth worked, the way disguises worked. It was kind of realistic, but also very gamey, and they embraced that. The way you take down the enemies, the way you kind of do all of these traps. So in a similar way, I felt like this game kind of embraced some of the arcadey and gamey things about Transformers. The way the kind of the pacing, right? The just the gameplay and the shooting doesn't really spend a lot of time having you go through, just like you mentioned, the tutorials, right? Tutorials doesn't really tell you to like go to menus and check things. Doesn't really have even maybe sometimes to its detriment. Like it doesn't really have like things like, hey, go and read up this lore in this menu about certain things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just always interested in pushing you forward, whether or not you like that or not. But I think it works in this game.
Yeah, I think, I mean, it's tempting to look at this and just say, it's just a generic third person shooter or something like that. But I think it's okay here because they're going with a tried and tested gameplay and just trying to do a really good job at that, and I think succeeding, because the appeal is the branding, right? The appeal is that this is quite a solid game that is also a Transformers game. It isn't just good by license standards, right? It's a game that, I mean, I was having fun there. I don't have to be a Transformers fan to get something out of this.
Yeah, for sure. And obviously, there's definitely, even me who is a Transformers fan, there's certain elements of Transformers lore that you really definitely don't need to stop and kind of over-examine. Why would they Why would they need to transform at all? Why is there a female robot? Like, and I think they understood that maybe, and they didn't really want to kind of get into that kind of stuff. They just focused on what actually was interesting about the whole prequel and the events that happened here, the war. Decepticons fighting Autobots. Why are they fighting, and what happens at the end? That's kind of what they went for. And I think also, you're mentioning budget. I think they were really aware of the budget and resources they had, and kind of succeeded and in kind of working with the limitations they had. It feels like it, right? It doesn't feel like there's something missing or kind of where it doesn't feel like they had to make really hard choices. Look, in the end, we as developers know that it may seem like that maybe, but maybe they did need to make some choices. But whatever choices they did have to make and made, it feels like it's a complete package. At least, well, I can tell that from playing the both games. I don't know how it felt to you, but it definitely felt like it wasn't really lacking anything.
Yeah, I mean, if they had tried something a lot more ambitious, they probably wouldn't have been able to polish this to the amount of time and money that they have had for a licensed game, right? So, yeah, I think that's pretty good.
Cool. So that was that. We'll take a short break and we'll come back with Rez. Hey everyone, we're back with Rez Infinite. Ian, do you know what's different in this updated version of this game?
Yeah, so I haven't actually played Rez Infinite, but I'm a big fan of the vanilla Rez. So the two things that this adds is it adds Area X, which I think is a new level that has some different gameplay mechanics, and it adds VR support.
Okay.
To the game itself.
Just to, I guess that is a disclaimer, we're playing on PC, obviously, and non-VR. And in fact, I'm going to be playing on mouse and keyboard against Ian's suggestion. Let's see how this feels. Obviously, this is a PC game. This version is on PC, so I would expect this to work fine with mouse and keyboard because that's the default control scheme PC players would have.
I'm sure it will, but it's just kind of against the whole point of Rez, in my opinion, anyway.
Okay. I guess I'm not sure what that means yet, but I guess we'll find out. If it is, if it will become unplayable, or we're missing out a lot, then we will switch to a controller. Right. So Rez, let's do this. I guess I should just choose play, although we have different options here. Traveling, a beginner's mode with no game over. Okay. Score attack, beyond, bonus stages and special modes, rankings. Quite a few modes here to choose from. and how to play. I mean, I would assume I should be fine with just jumping in, right? I don't need to go through how to play.
Yeah,
Or...
you'll be okay.
Okay.
It's an easy game to pick up and play.
Yes.
You're doing the how to play anyway. All right. I think this is the story that was just in the manual of the original version, or them explaining the story.
Okay. Oh wow, quite a dump here. While I read on this, Ian, tell me a bit more about this history of this game. I know it was developed by Sega's United Game Artists, headed by Tetsuya Mizuguchi, I think. Who I had read up a bit on him, and he kind of imagined this game after going to Europe and going to these trance and electronic music festivals, and they decided, well, games should be an form of art, and kind of, I guess, made this game afterwards.
Yeah, it's this game had a very interesting development. There's a really good post-mortem that Mizuguchi did at GDC. So this came out in 2001 on the PS2 and Dreamcast. So it was one of the last games that Sega developed for the Dreamcast in-house. I'm not actually sure. It didn't actually have a North American release on the Dreamcast originally, but it did come out in the PS2 in all the regions. So yeah, this game is it's a rail shooter, a bit like Panzer Dragoon or Space Harrier or Star Fox, and the gameplay is quite simple. When the game came out, even for the time, it had very simple kind of arcadey gameplay, but the focus isn't really on the complexity of your actions. The focus is on sort of being one with the music. So Mizuguchi was a big fan of music, and sort of wanted to breach rhythm games. And he had done some things like he'd done some like 4D rides early on at Sega, and then he worked on some racing games. And for him, his interest in racing games was primarily like the tactile feeling, the connection that you have with a car when you drive it. And he was really proud of working on like some games where you would like they worked on a motorbike game where you leaned left and right on one of those motorcycle like plastic motorcycles to steer the car. So he's really interested in this kind of fourth dimension of interacting with games. And yeah, there is this story about he was in Zurich, and he was watching as the DJ changed the song or changed the tempo of the song, that the entire crowd moved differently to the music. And it got him thinking about that relationship. And so he took his team out to clubs for inspiration, and they watched street videos of street musicians play music, and they tried to answer very primal human questions of like, what is music, and why do we all feel this innate connection with music? And I know Mizuguchi had this feeling that rhythm games, maybe up to that point and maybe kind of since then, or in general, tend to be about the player mimicking the songs, doing kind of a Simon Says, and he feels like music is inherently creative, and so the player needs to be an active participant in creating the music. And so the gameplay of Rez is quite simple, but the player is an active participant in the song of the game.
Interesting. It's funny how once again we chose games that do to us kind of similar things, maybe like not in an opposite way. You wouldn't really be interested in maybe Transformers type of things in general. At the same time, this type of game would definitely not be something I would be picking up at all. This is definitely not something I was ever interested. Rhythm games and music type games. So if it wasn't for this, I would probably have never played this, even though I heard about this game throughout the years. There is another thing that kind of contrasts Transformers here, and you probably noticed it, is that there's a lot of not just story dump, but just mechanics dump and tutorials just straight up, even before you start playing, which is really, really different from Transformers that just kind of let you jump in and figure it out.
But I would argue you don't need any of this stuff. You can just jump into the game right now.
Well, I was can I keep.
Yep. You're just it said, do you want to view the how to play screen, and you said yes.
Okay. How,
the original, like I played this on Dreamcast.
how do I
Originally,
go
and,
get back? How do I get?
escape?
Okay. Okay.
So now that you viewed it once, okay,
Right.
yeah.
Okay. Got it. It's a bit weird, but all right.
So yeah, get in there.
Arena 1. Let's go.
Yeah, so the gameplay is quite simple, and Rez isn't a particularly long game, but it's the kind of game that you can play again and again. So what you want to do is you want to hold left click in this case, and drag your cursor over. And when you let go, you will release the shot.
Oh, okay.
And ideally, you want to chain attacks together, and you want to lock on as many. Yeah.
Yeah, there was something about in those tutorials about that the fact that I can't evade certain projectiles, so I have to destroy them in time, which is an interesting concept. Although I can move a bit.
And you can move it. Yeah, you can move a bit with like WASD here. And when you see those blue, that square there, if you attack that, it will take you to the next segment of the level. So you just got to keep attacking it. It's quite a fast-paced game, actually.
Oh god, that's loud. Wait, let me just... it's really, really loud.
Yeah, as long as you can hear it, okay. And that thing is a power-up. So when you collect enough of those, you will sort of level up.
Yeah, he was talking about some kind of evolution mechanic.
Yep. So if you get hit, you'll level down, and your avatar will actually change into a different shape. And if you can collect enough of the blue things, then you'll level up. So you'll go up a level. So you'll both gain health, and I think it changes the way that you attack. So this game does have a bit of an advanced scoring system, and the game itself isn't too hard, but it's definitely the kind of game that you are encouraged to play again and again and get higher scores in, and further connect with the music.
Obviously, the music connection is, or like the presence of music is apparent straight away, but I'm still not sure how this kind of works with having your own input on the actual music itself. For now, I'm just kind of targeting these guys and killing them.
Yeah, so it's not the player is like, it's not like you really think, oh, there was a missile going at you. It's not like you're really thinking about composing a song. It's more that the actions that the player does are reflected in the music.
Right.
And so as you play through the level, the song is going to build up. And really, this game is just, it's almost like a mood piece. It's about kind of connecting with a song and feeling in sync with a song. This game, famously, when it came out on PS2, they actually sold a vibrator that you could plug in the USB port of your console. Yeah.
Wait, what?
They call it the trance vibrator. Now, I don't think it was meant as a sex thing. That's the joke everyone makes, but Sega claims that it was really just meant to be a thing that you could put it in your lap, for example, and it would pulse to the rhythm of the game. I mean, the controller does as well. The whole idea is that it could add just another layer of physical connection to the music.
Right.
Which is why the Rez is kind of the perfect fit for VR. And actually, when this game came out, Mizuguchi Studio developed a what they call it the synesthesia suit, and it was a full body suit of like 100 different vibrating motors that you'd put it on, and sort of you feel your entire body pulse to the rhythm of the music. So he's really interested in this sort of this tactile fourth dimension aspect to games. So when you turn to the orb, it's because you got hit, and then when you gathered enough of the blue things, you level back up.
Well, sounds like what you're describing there, it was almost like ahead of its time, really. Sounds like something that today would be a much more of a, thing that developers would explore much more willingly.
I mean, even just the visuals of this game for 2001 was really ahead of the curve, and I don't think this game sold very well, especially because I think it came at an awkward point where it didn't even come out in North America on the Dreamcast. So sort of an earlier PS2 game, but a bit hard to market. And it's a huge cult classic, and it was one of maybe an earlier example of games being classified as art, right? A game that sort of pushed the medium forward. This is probably the kind of game that is a lot of game developers' favorite games, rather than anything that's like a huge hit.
So the fact that this was kind of positioned as, oh, finally games are art thing, is something I have a gripe with, but I'll kind of touch on that at the end of this. So how do I use overdrive?
That's right click. So that's a big bomb attack.
Why would I use that over just left click?
So it's a big bomb attack that damages everything on the screen. Damages everything on the screen. So
Right.
save that. Yeah. So in the years since Rez Mizuguchi left Sega, he founded a couple companies, and he's worked in a lot of different genres. He's worked in like particularly puzzle games. He's done some kind of well, actually, he did a Tetris game a few years ago that was like this, where it's all synced to the rhythm, Tetris Effect, which is awesome. I get the impression that he's not too fussed over whether he's working on a racing game or a shooting game or a puzzle game or whatever. That he's more interested in chasing this goal of just finding some unique gameplay and synchronizing it all to music. He said that so this is your boss. So he said that or the boss. So he said that he's been inspired by the I want to say Polish painter Kandinsky.
I think it was Russian.
Russian? Okay, yeah. So Kandinsky, he would take his painting set out into the street, and he would paint what he heard around him. This very abstract. These very abstract paintings, and so part of his sort of mission statement with Rez, and I'd say maybe even his career, has been asking himself, what would Kandinsky do if he had a computer? What if Kandinsky had modern technology?
Oh, I died.
You died.
Wait, is there a checkpoints in this game? Or...
No, so you're at the boss there. So the levels are only maybe 15 minutes long.
Oh my god. Okay.
It takes you back. I mean, there's only 5 levels in the game, Serge. And it's the kind of game I want to say that in Rez you have to get a certain like once you beat level 1, you can go straight to level 2, but I think you need a cumulative score of a certain amount to get to level 3, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's not the kind of game you can clear in an hour. You have to play the stages again and again.
Well, it also has a lot of different modes. I guess they knew that would kind of maybe encourage players to replay that this game in general.
Yeah, and it's definitely the kind of game that you can chain attacks together better for higher scores, and you can get hit less and use your overdrive. And I think there's different routes. So there's potentially like milking enemies for score before you move on to the next bits. So there's.
So was this ever in arcades?
No. Surprisingly enough, I mean, it looks like the kind of game that would be. And knowing Sega, it's sort of a bit surprising that it didn't end up in arcade. But yeah, there is a lot of early prototype gameplay footage of this floating around the internet, and I get the impression that it had a really long pre-production phase, or because the developers were less, it's not like they sat down and said, let's make a rail shoot with a bump and techno soundtrack. It's because it started with like more of a philosophical problem. I think they bounced around for a long time with ideas before this game really sort of emerged. And the Area X stuff that has been added in the new version of Rez. So, I mean, this stuff's been added, 20 years or close to 20 years after the original release. But in Area X, they actually, you're not on a track anymore. I think you can free roam around environments.
Oh, okay.
You're not on rails. So I've tried not to look at it because I need to pick this up at some point and give it a go myself. I'm not going to spoil myself, but that's what I heard about it.
Interesting. So was this ever released on mobile?
Nope. So I think this came out on Dreamcast, PS2, Xbox 360, and then PS4 and PC.
Interesting, because this would really lend itself well to like a touchscreen as well, right?
Yeah, it's very simple controls. It's very easily approachable game. It's a kind of game that in some ways, It has a contemporary soundtrack. It's got very simple, approachable gameplay. On paper, it's a thing that should have immediate commercial appeal, you'd think. But I think because there's a certain perception of what games are, it makes it a bit hard to market and find an audience for.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's tons of crazy stuff on mobile nowadays anyway.
You leveled up. Nice.
Nice. Can I do something new then?
So it increases the strength of your attacks. And I mean, are you using the WASD keys to move?
No, I'm just using the mouse really.
Okay, yeah. So, all right, I remember now. So in this game, you actually, like, if you move the cursor to the edges of the screen, you can kind of move your character around a little bit. And you can use that to... Oh, maybe you can't. Maybe
Well, that's still a mouse, to be honest. I could just use... I'm using the mouse, really. That's it.
Yeah, okay.
And to be honest, I'll say this. Maybe I'm just because I'm more... kind of gravitate towards PC controls anyway, mouse and keyboard. I'm really enjoying the mouse controls on this. Like the targeting is really easy with that.
Honestly, they probably are more accurate than a thumbstick would be. It's mostly the case of, well, I mean, the game is tuned around the slower analog controls, so I suppose you have a bit of an advantage here.
Like, would you consider the pure experience of this be with a controller?
Well, not necessarily, but I think it's the rumble is the most important thing.
Obviously, I'm not getting that. So, what would that give me?
So it is your controller would pulse to the bass drum.
Sorry, wait. Can you say it again? It was blasting in my ears.
No problem. Your controller would pulse to the bass drum, to the kick drum.
Yeah, I guess I'm still not. I think the music. I actually look. I don't want to like insult this game, but I think ultimately the beat part of this game is kind of there as fluff.
When you say beat, do you mean like the whole aspect of the game being synchronized to the music?
Yeah. Like, because at the end of the day, when you shoot the enemies, they make sound that kind of you could consider that blends into the music, but I am the one that's choosing when to hit them, right? So I can just delay that or do it quickly, and they kind of not really in sync with the music in the end.
I mean, I think it's syncing up enough to where it's accomplishing its goals. I mean, keep in mind this game came out 4 years before Guitar Hero. When this came out, there was, as far as music games, there was Konami had Beatmania in the arcades, and there was Parappa, but there wasn't a lot else.
Yeah, I mean, it's look, if we want to call this a musical experience or a musical game, that's definitely that 100%. I'm not going to take it away from it.
I wouldn't. Yeah, it's not a rhythm game.
Well, yeah, maybe not that, but it's Okay, I'm gonna get.
You're leveled up this time, so you can take more hits. That's the other thing is, I mean, you can also just think of leveling up as adding an extra layer of health.
Wow, this overdrive is strong.
It's a shame though. This game also feels like maybe because it was one of the last Dreamcast games, it's also kind of one of the last like truly classic Sega games. Shortly after this, they you need to look to the left.
Oh wow.
Yeah. Pan your camera, or else you're gonna get hit.
Oh wow.
Oh, so you've been hit twice already. Oh, Oh, right there. Oh my God, Serge.
Oh, okay.
Oh no.
I'll say this: it's a bit hard, at least for me, to because the enemies, the flying enemies, right? They don't really
Mhm.
do anything to you, right? Or am I missing something? Because only the like the projectiles, the rockets.
Yep.
So you can just ignore the enemies.
I'm sure they must attack you in some way.
Hmm. Well, in that instance, there was so much going on that it kind of like it was hard to spot the deadly things.
I never had that issue, but then I'm playing a controller. I don't know if that made a difference.
No, I mean, it wasn't that for me. It was just like visually it was a bit. And also, I missed that I had to actually like turn to the left. I thought it was done.
I gotta say, this game does not look 22 years old. This looks like a game. This looks like an indie game that could be released today.
Yeah, but you know why that is. It's this kind of visual style is going to be timeless.
Well, I was thinking it's not just the fact that it's stylized. I think the fact that it's the wireframe graphics.
Well, yeah.
That those scale up so well to higher resolutions.
But also, we're not playing the original here, right? We're playing the the Rez Infinite, which is remaster PC kind of port thing.
Yep. Yeah. So these guys are shooting missiles. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. It doesn't look like the graphics have really been touched. It mostly looks like the assets have just been upscaled to higher resolution. There's definitely no. I mean, maybe the textures are higher resolution, but I'm not seeing any difference in lighting or engine visual features.
It looks decent. It looks nice, crisp, and on 4K monitor, obviously with the.
But yeah, the story of what happened after this game is I think the team was absorbed into Sonic Team, so they went from being able to make this game to being a part of a team that was making Sonic games, which is a bit sad, right? So most of this team quit Sega shortly after, and founded a new studio. So it's just a shame that that's sort of the financial situation that Sega was in around that time, and they were acquired by Sammy. So around that time is kind of when they shifted from classic Sega to whatever Sega became after that. And that Rez is sort of one of the last titles that they did on their own platform, sort of one of the last classic Sega games.
Hmm.
Actually, I think around this time, financially, Sega was doing terribly. I love that when their backs were against the wall, the company didn't get conservative with their ideas. They were actually sort of going wilder than ever before.
Yeah, that's good. And the team that made this, do you know if they made any similar games to this afterwards?
Yes. Yeah. So, well, actually, around this time, they were doing a couple games in the Space Channel 5 series, which is actually a bit more like Parappa the Rapper, where it's a classic sort of Simon Says game that has this that has more of a story-driven presentation. And then most of them went on to found Q Games, which did Luminous on. Am I pronouncing that right? Luminous.
Oh yeah,
Luminous? On the PSP, if you know that one.
yeah.
So very similar presentation to this, right? It's a simple kind of puzzle style game, but everything you do is matched to a beat. They also did Meteos on the DS and Child of Light.
Wait, Child of Light?
PS3. Or sorry, not Child of Light. Gosh, what's it called? It's something light. No, Child of Eden. That's what it is. Child of Eden on the PS3 360, which is sort of a spiritual successor to this game.
Yeah, actually, I heard about that one. Have you played it?
I have, yeah. I thought it was quite good. The big draw was using the Kinect or the PlayStation Move as your cursor, And then I think later they patched in controller support. Definitely plays better with the controller. And then since then, Mizuguchi has remastered Luminous. Actually, with Luminous, they introduced a mode with the Nintendo Switch version where you could connect up to, I think, 8 Switch Joy-Cons. You could connect up to 8 Switch Joy-Cons just to use them for the rumble function.
Right.
So you could place them all over your body and you could feel the pulse of the rhythm. So again, it's something he's very passionate about.
I'm noticing something about the rhythm about this game, but maybe not exactly connected to the music, maybe how it was intended or something. But I'm noticing that the rhythm I'm getting into naturally is the one of scanning for enemies and kind of learning where they appear, because I guess they appear in the same place every time, right? So after like playing this level over and over, you can start learning when and where they appear, and you can actually predict that and start almost like swiping preemptively and get into that kind of rhythm. Whether or not that's directly connected to music or not is a different matter, but you can actually just do that without the music at all, right? So
yeah, well, and you notice too that there is sort of a rhythm where if enemies sweep in from the left, they'll sweep in from the right next.
Yeah,
that there's probably I think there's a lot of consideration going into the timings at which the enemies appear. Nice. Okay. Yeah. Do you feel like maybe there should have been some directional warnings if attacks are coming from off screen?
Yeah, I mean, I guess it kind of sometimes doesn't know if it's on rails or not in that way. Because you would expect on a Rails game to kind of not expect you to be concerned about where you're facing. But obviously this game in the end is a bit of a mix between on Rails and not. Which is fine, I guess.
There's a lot of crap going on the screen right now.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're able to read everything?
Right now I'm having an easier time because I've learned from my mistakes. But at the first time it was definitely kind of a bit confusing. Now I'm looking for these kind of green projectiles and I'm prepared for them. But I guess a lot of this game is kind of learning and replaying it.
Yeah, I guess because green and red are contrasting colors.
Wow, that's loud. That was someone screaming at.
It's funny because on my end, it's all balanced pretty well. So I don't know what's going on for you, or if that'll show up in your recording.
Oh, this is a long boss.
Oh, careful. Oh. Wow.
I wish I had an overdrive.
This is intense.
Oh wow, I just noticed I haven't even... It was just a half health. He still has half health is left.
And you can only take one more hit. Oh my god. Oh my god.
Oh man, this is quite hard.
I think the first time I don't remember having any trouble with this level.
Do you think it's worth... Okay, I'm going to try one more time, and no matter what happens, we can try different modes, because I think it's worth trying those. Considering that this only has 5 initial levels, and they expect you to play these other modes. Yeah, so right here, like especially right now, just swiping kind of feels natural, and especially when you know when they and where they're gonna appear, so you can kind of create your own rhythm.
Yeah, there's this sort of left, right, left, right, right.
I think this game could have used bonuses or like rewards for doing certain rhythmical, destruction of these enemies. Like if you do it in a certain rhythmic way, you get a bit more.
I see what you mean. Yeah. Oh, level. That's it. Leveling up also and leveling down also changes the music slightly.
Mm.
Yeah, it's interesting. I wonder how many of these enemies are actual threats if you leave them alone.
Mm.
I suppose maybe part of the challenge is figuring out which enemies you might have to, well, into the later levels, which enemies you have to prioritize. I know the developers also described as the combat as a call and response,
Call and response.
like in music. So the enemies setting up are like the DJ setting things up, and then you as the player are responding.
This game feels like almost it could use like no aiming, right? And instead a rhythm attack. Like you would have to just time it correctly to the rhythm, and then it just shoots the projectiles for you. And so that you could just close your eyes and then just play like that. Whilst the actual game is you really have to it's kind of like an arcade cabinet where you have to target the actual enemies and shoot them pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
What was that game that did that rhythm battle system?
Well, the rapper has that.
Does it? I haven't played that.
Right? Where the sort of if you think about like the enemy gives you a line and then you have to match that line.
Mm.
The prepper games are fun. I think what's interesting about rhythm games is that the focus over time became licensed music. To this day, the big appeal is playing songs that you already enjoy, right? But if you think of like this game, the song is the level design. If the tempo changed in the song, then it would necessitate the level to be moving at a faster pace, right?
Maybe.
I mean, certainly in a game like Parappa, the notes are based on the song lyrics. So if the song lyrics changed, then it actually would change the notes the player has to input. Oh, you're going to level up again.
Nice.
I want to hear what the music does when you level up next. There you go.
Oh, something's happening. There's some sort of new UI element.
I seem to recall this game having this these sort of visual themes where as you level up higher that you start to more resemble a sperm or something like that.
A sperm? All right.
Yeah, or an egg or a fetus, or there is this kind of theme of rebirth. I've never been super into VR, but I can imagine that this is, and I've heard that this is a really standout title in VR.
Yeah, I can see that.
I wonder if you look, like if looking around moves the cursor. No, I guess you could just look around at all times, and then you would move the cursor with a controller. Right? You're doing well.
Only because I had 2 overdrives.
Ah. You need to feel the rhythm, Surge. I think maybe it's because you're locking on really long chains like that. You're locking on really long chains, and then you're not free to shoot the missiles. You can't die here, that's for sure. I think slow and steady is going to win this one, as long as you don't get too greedy and you always prioritize the missiles. Oh, you're almost there. Nice.
Nice. Oof, that was intense. Wow, I didn't expect a hard boss fight in this game. I'll say that.
No, you're doing pretty good, actually. I mean, I guess I suppose you had a bunch of attempts, but
It does get a bit visually overwhelming. But yeah, like you were right, as long as I was kind of using the long charge attacks, while once to switch to kind of like short bursts, kind of did it for me. Actually, it's a good time to check out other modes that we have here. Let's see. Yes.
yeah, basically, if you were above if
Yeah.
you'd leveled up, you would lose that.
Which one do you think is the one that's probably worth? Maybe Beyond? Special modes?
I don't know if Beyond was added for Infinite.
I mean, it doesn't matter if it did, because this is I haven't played the original either.
Yeah.
Let's try Beyond.
Oh, you have to get a higher score to do that.
Wait, so I have to get what? Clear Area 5 in play mode. Clear mode? Okay. Or play for over 5 hours. Okay. Let's see. Traveling?
So that's just you won't be able to game over on the.
Oh, so it's just the same level?
Yeah. So I don't know, maybe just check out Area 2, and then regardless of whether you succeed or fail, that'll take us to close to.
Okay.
Close to an hour.
Yeah, let's try that then. Area 2. So, let's see. An analyzation shut down 98%. Support items 94%.
That's pretty good.
So it has also mentions the artist, I guess, of the track.
Yeah. Yeah, so the nice thing about playing another level is there's a different song, there's a different rhythm. And so the levels and the way the enemies are coming out is going to be at a different rhythm too.
So have you seen some sort of high level plays of this game, like people who really spend a lot of time and kind of figured out how to really game the system?
No, I should have looked that up before this, because I have never played this game for score. Never played this game for score, but I bet there's a lot of cool stuff going on.
Yeah, because I definitely see this as like, when you see people go really nuts on going ham on DDR machines, right? So
Yeah.
there's a difference between those people, and if I tried the DDR machines, for example, I would be like, a newborn. While those people are play it so much that they can achieve really high scores and look absolutely insane playing them.
Well, and yeah, even just maybe more so shmups, arcade shooters have such a high skill ceiling. I assume a lot of this game, getting a good score is I think primarily about leveling up really early on and then hanging on to that high level for as long as you can, because that will let you do more damage and everything. And also, I think your score is affected by the amount of enemies that you shoot down, and it's affected by the amount of power-ups that you pick up.
Yeah, here for example, I feel like if I knew this game better and played more, I would have chosen exactly which ones to target, because there's definitely not enough time to kill all of them, or at least the way I'm playing.
And also there, you're choosing to go into the next area, but you don't have to shoot that thing. So I suppose, like Transformers, I mean, this is very simple. Well, even simpler gameplay. This is a one-button game, right? For the most part. But I don't know. Do you feel like they're doing enough to keep things interesting?
Well, I think, like I said, I think this game is definitely the type that will reward you if you spend a lot of time on it, right? Learning it and being able to do these high scores, and just even in general, that the fact that the second level already has a few things that the first one didn't, so at least it kind of gives you new things in a more of a classical way that the games do.
Yeah, I think considering this game is, I mean, realistically, a playthrough is probably about three hours or so. I think this game has a ton of variety tucked away. But yeah, I definitely wouldn't want. I don't think it doesn't overstay its welcome, and I wouldn't want this game to be any longer. You could double the level count, but then you'd have to start adding. I think you'd start adding in more and more mechanics.
Yeah.
And I get the impression that was something the developers intentionally wanted to avoid. They wanted to keep this pure and focus on really simple interactions that are boosted by music. Because if you're worrying about a ton of other things, then you're thinking less about the music. So I have to admire the purity. Whoa.
Oh.
So that was interesting. So there was a ton of projectiles coming out there, but only maybe 2 of them were aimed at you.
Yeah. Huh.
So there definitely is pattern recognition involved in these levels, remembering what's going to come where and what you need to prioritize. That comes with time. I love the way that the music slowly builds up over the course of the level, often so subtly that you don't notice it.
I'll be honest, sometimes that I kind of miss that, but I believe you.
Oh, you almost got hit there.
Oh.
Yeah, it's the kind of thing that I'm noticing more as a spectator.
Yeah.
That every time you go into a new zone, the music is building up in some way, and it is sometimes going up and then it's going back down a bit, but it's changing in a meaningful way. In the same way that the pacing of the level, every levels aren't just a single ramp up of intensity. They move up and down in intensity, and the music is definitely following suit. So the music is back down a bit here. Yeah, there's these ships that you can just whale on for score. But
So
I think maybe
these,
they dispatch enemies.
oh, okay, you can destroy them. I thought they were just there for like a sponge.
I think they also send out enemies. So there's a few interesting choices you can make. Wow, I've noticed a ton of the blue power-ups that I've skimmed by. I noticed they tend to kind of sneak them out in the corners, especially when you're busy with enemies.
Hmm.
And often they're enemies that you don't actually have to destroy. But if you're not paying attention closely, if you're focusing on some other enemies, you're going to miss those.
I guess that's one of the things that you can do once you start actual speedrunning and getting the highest scores. Then you start paying attention to those.
Yeah, I think some of it too is probably just training your eyes to suss everything out in this game. To keep an eye out for the blue thing amidst all the chaos that's going on. All right, let's see what you do here. Oh, you got hit? Even between the forms of the bosses, the music is changing.
Hmm.
So were there ever any rhythm games that you connected with?
Not really. I don't think so. Oh, this was behind me.
Oh yeah, sneaky.
No, there was a time some years ago when everyone was playing the Rock Band and all of that stuff and Guitar Hero. I was just never into those as well. I'm not sure if this will change my mind, but I actually, well, I'll talk about it in a bit.
You locked on too much.
Yeah. Right. Well, I guess we can just go back to the start menu, and I want to kind of talk about a couple of things here.
Cool. Yeah.
So yeah, I a few years ago when the all the rock bands and what was it, the Guitar Heroes popular. There's definitely a lot of people I knew that were really into them. There was one guy who had like the entire rock band setup. He had the drums, all the guitars. We used to go to his place and would play that. I say you go and play, but it would be like others were playing and I was just chilling there. I just it was never really my thing. And actually, I think this game, for me, it's more it's not even like a rhythm game, but the way I see it, it's more like a shmup or like a cabinet arcade shooter with some music elements, right? Because
Yeah,
at the end of
yeah.
the day, the actual challenge is be quick enough to, and efficient enough and smart enough to shoot down these flying enemies that are coming towards you. So like, when we went to the arcade some weeks ago, out of the games there, right, you pick up a gun and you have to target the enemy that will appear on screen sooner or later. And if they manage to attack you with their projectiles, it's game over. So I think this is very similar to that. I think the music aspect, I don't know. I guess you would have to play a lot more and get a lot better at this game to kind of have the music do something specific for you, either help you or something else. For me, it was just there in the background. I was more focused on trying to get these enemies and avoid their projectiles and destroy them and get the power ups. So just like you would in a shmup, I guess.
I suppose there is that issue of if you're focusing so much on the gameplay, then maybe you can't enjoy. It's maybe harder to enjoy the music for what it is. I don't think the music is meant to be anything like super complex. You definitely don't have to be a pro player to experience what's meant to be there. It's more just that I think the music is synchronized. Yeah, synchronized, I suppose, to the experience in a way that other games don't usually do.
Yeah, I think it's fine. It's not, it's not really it's not a bad thing or anything. It's just that you definitely need to get into the mindset of for this game. It's like almost like a Tetris, right? You sometimes maybe if you're in the mood, you can sit down again. If this was on a phone or a tablet, I actually think very few games I would consider be best on a mobile device, but maybe this might be one of them. If it ever was, because it could be a really nice experience on those platforms. And actually, I want to talk about something you mentioned and something you brought up even last episode when you suggested this game, and that is that it's the team that made it kind of considered it to be some sort of a way forward into games becoming art form. And I think that it's a really kind of basic way of looking at that. I think just because there's a lot of abstract here with the visuals and the way you move in this game, it doesn't mean that that is the only way the games can be an art form or just anything really, right? It's nothing. Things don't need to be abstract for them to be considered art. Like a skillfully made photograph is art because the photographer behind that photograph is an artist in photography. But the actual picture can be of anything, can be of a mundane building, and it can be something very like non abstract. But it's still art. It's same thing with video games. A video game is an art just by default. It doesn't matter if it's a Call of Duty with gritty visuals or Rez with all these abstract kind of lawnmower man flying around, right? So I think I would never really kind of consider it that way.
I should make it clear that I don't think the team was worried about making art. I think it's more what the critics have labeled Rez as is Rez is a work of art, and I agree. I think sometimes the pressure to label games as art comes from a place of people needing the medium to grow up. Like they can show this to their parents and say, "Look, Ma, I have sophisticated tastes," or something like that. But I mean, everyone's got their own definition of art, and my definition is very loose, and it pretty much includes anything that humans make just for pleasure, just sort of interest.
Yeah, right.
Right.
Like you can be you can be a chef and an artist. You can make such a delicious dish, such an elaborate thing that it's an art. It's a work of art.
But I do think it's cool that that some games have higher aspirations, and I think it's cool that I think there's some value in using slinging around the word art, I suppose, as a way of I don't know, setting different goals than just making like a Transformers game, which is fun for sure. But I think it's also cool that this game was influenced by rave culture and paintings and asking deeper, meaningful questions about the relationships that people have with art. I think that's really cool, and you don't see that too much even these days, and you certainly didn't see it in 2001. So there really is nothing quite like Rez.
Yeah, it definitely feels like you would have to extract certain artistic feelings from this, for yourself, right? So it's very heavily based on individual. Cool. That was Rez Infinite. Ian, let's talk about games for next week, next episode.
Ooh, yes.
Ian, I think because Armored Core 6 is coming out soon, in light of that, I think it's about time we tackle that franchise. And for next episode, I'll have you play Armored Core 3 Master of Arena.
Ooh, okay. Double feature with the double feature. Robots, big robots. Serge loves his robots. What should I have you play? Okay, here we go. I'll have you play Kingsfield IV, another FromSoft game.
All right, it'll be a From Software themed episode. I've been playing From Software games for years now, but I actually managed to avoid that series entirely. So I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome.
Cool. All right, that'll be that for the episode. Thanks for listening, guys, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.